capitalism is based. First off, if people want to use capitalism to their advantage because they're upset about things, I think that's pretty fucking cool. Free market. Let's
Been arguing
calling someone
about
bad
that
faith.
the whole.
Oh no. Calling
You
someone
literally
bad.
argued against that.
Blue, thank you,
Calling,
buddy. Thank you
you
for
might
the
have misunderstood me.
subscriptions.
So
Blue,
anyway,
you're the best.
calling someone bad faith. It's funny because that seems to me on the platform to be categorically understood to be like the most bad faith thing you can say on a panel is calling someone bad faith or saying they're effectively being bad faith. You started your argument saying I don't need to explain to you, which I think is pretty telling.
That's understandable.
I don't know if it is understandable. Here's the problem: is this is a monumental conversation.
It is. It's important.
Yeah.
It's at least as important as Lord of the Rings, objectively, right?
Perhaps more. Right.
I mean,
at least
objectively more. Right?
Lord of the Rings is an IP that is kind of post-stated, right? There's like an end to its area of influence. Like it's a lineage that exists in our minds, right? Which is cool and important. But this is the times that we live in. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about racism in fantasy. Fantasy's alive.
Nothing's more important than Lord of the Rings.
Nothing is more important than this.
I mean, Star Wars, I would say, but
no.
Star Wars already. Star Wars is dead now. There is no Star Wars.
You get the fuck out of here with Star Wars, man. It's not important as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Are you excited for the upcoming Amazon show?
No, I'm not.
The Rings of Power.
Okay. Oh, we can talk about it. We could talk about it because I think there's been a little to do about that stuff based on the choices they have made and casting, and based on the choices.
It has nothing to do with casting. I think it's the choices they've made with the way they're going with the story. I don't really have confidence. It's not a casting thing at all.
Okay. We will explore that a little more. Stardust is running a few minutes behind, but she'll be here soon. But we will get started, and I would like to give everyone here a warm welcome. Many of you have been on my show before. Some of you, it's your first time. But either way, I hope you feel welcome here. We're gonna have an honest, open discussion. We're gonna talk about, whether these icons in our lives of fantasy gaming, fantasy literature, fantasy movies, whether they perpetuate harmful racial stereotypes. There's a lot of discussion that comes up every now and again about how in Dungeons and Dragons, a very popular fantasy tabletop game, how the depictions of certain races are harmful and actually are one-to-one with real-world races, as some claim. There's a lot of talk about the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings remake and a lot of the choices they've made there. So I did want to kind of delve into this and talk about this a lot. Yamato, thank you for bringing this subject to my attention. He's the one that brought it up initially. Thank you for the follow, Desperado Sensei. Really appreciate it. What I'm going to do now...
I told him to do that, by the way, in my chat.
Okay, well, thank you. I want to give everyone here a chance to introduce themselves, kind of give their initial take on things, their opening statement, if you will. And then we'll kind of get started and discuss this more in depth. We'll start with Black Yamato over here.
My name is Black Yamato. I do a lot of gameplay on my Twitch channel. How I feel about racism in fantasy, I feel like it's a thing, and it's a thing that we need to talk about to address when dealing with depictions of people. I guess that's the end of my statement.
That's fun. Okay. Thank you for being here, and again, thank you for bringing this up. The one, the only Katie.
Aw,
Hello.
I'm sure there are more of me out there. At least with my name. I did not realize when I signed up for this how dorky this is gonna be. So like the intro that we've experienced like really opened my eyes to like the next few hours. Not excited for that.
She's against dorky stuff now.
I'm not against dorky stuff. Apparently, I'm considered a nerd. I don't know why, but that's what people say.
2 weeks ago, you was talking about waifus.
It's her intro.
That doesn't make me
We'll
a
get
nerd.
into it.
Excuse me. It's like,
We'll get
what?
into
No,
it.
it makes you a dork. Yeah,
We walked
exactly.
into Mordor.
That's the distinction.
Okay, whatever dork I ain't part of you people. Okay? It's
Whoa!
Yo,
What do you
whoa,
mean,
you people!
Oh,
Whoa!
How
Holy
revealing.
shit!
Mask off.
With
That was-
discrimination
dude,
already.
Full mask off. The
Jeez.
power level has been
It's
unleashed.
Damn.
Am I gonna
Yeah.
get canceled for platforming you, Katie? Am I gonna
Holy.
get canceled for platforming
I thought
you?
I was gonna be the one to get you canceled.
Yikes!
Oh man.
Okay.
I'm still trying to cancel you, meat. Like we're
I
not
know.
done with
I'm
that.
uncancelable. My meat
Okay.
is invulnerable.
Okay,
The
I
midnight
am
meat.
mostly interested in because when Wick like sold me on the panel, he's like, there are some takes that he tried to explain to me, and I did not get them. So I'll be mostly listening, and if I feel like I have enough information, I will also weigh in because I always have opinions, whether they're correct or not. And hopefully, I won't come off too ignorant. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
not
thank
as confident about this one.
That's okay. Confidence is good in some situations, but overconfidence will get you dead. So, Katie, glad to have you. Thanks for coming. I always appreciate your takes. So yeah, hopefully, you gen up to speed as we go, and we can have a full, strong Katie opinion in on this. Okay. Next, we have a first timer to the show, but someone I've talked to before, and he's a real neat guy. Nicotine. Hi.
Hello.
Wanna
Yeah.
intro-
So. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Nicotine. My claim to fame is being married to Not So Erudite, the famous Twitch streamer. Yeah, I don't have any socials or anything to shout out. I don't want any fame or any of that sort of stuff. I'm only here because Wick gratuitously flirted with me in DMs, and I could not resist appearing. And yeah, so a basic sort of idea of like what my opinion is on this whole thing. Is that sort of the next part of it?
If you'd like, yes.
An opening
It's up to you.
statement. Okay, opening statement. I love fantasy. I wanted to be a fantasy author for a long time, and it's still something kind of on the back burner. I fear that over politicization from the outer world into the inner world of fantasy risks damaging the art that people can engage in the medium. So that's it.
Oh, thank you. That's something we will delve into, especially because not only is this talk, are we going to be discussing whether or not this happens, but also what should we do about it, and is perhaps the cure worse than the disease in a lot of cases. But
I
that's
just formed an opinion, by the way, so I'm ready to go.
Well, good. That didn't take long,
Nice.
and we're ready to go.
Nice.
But let's move on to Professor Meat. Hi.
Okay. Hello, Professor _ Meat on Twitch. Sword and Shield of the Base and the Righteous. I'm here to explain. Well, as my stream says, I'm basically here to defend the fantasy genre from SJWs. It seems to me that there is always some potentiality for ascribing a racist and problematic narrative to fiction. So at that point, the question then becomes, okay, at what point does it become problematic, and can we apply that metric to the genre in a way that lets us say that it's problematic? And I don't quite see it. So I'm looking for that evidence, and we'll see if we can find it today. Peace and love.
Well, that's a strong opinion out the gate. We'll see. We'll see how it works for him. We'll see how it goes. It will be interesting. Zig Mover, please.
Hola. Hi, I'm Zig. Zig Mover is pretty much all my socials on Twitter and Twitch and all that. I actually just started a Discord, a professional wrestling / gaming Discord. If you like professional wrestling, you like gaming, like hanging out, hit me up and join my Discord. We'll be good friends. As far as my initial opinions go with racism in fantasy, I'm a gatekeeper of the gatekeepers. I like gatekeeping the gatekeepers that try to keep people out of enjoying fantasy, even if they're not even if they don't fit the nerdy mold, as it were. Back in the day when the comics we were getting bullied for playing like comics and D&D in high school, and now it's like accepted everywhere. and people don't want people. Certain people don't want people joining the game space. I'm one of those people that hate those types of people that try to gatekeep others. So we'll just go from there.
Okay, that'll be strong. And hopefully Stardust joins us soon, but we'll see. She's probably amassing her forces at her border and getting a lot of propaganda together.
Yeah.
Just because you're threatening her with your alliances.
It's
It's
know
not her
what?
fault.
You know what?
Perhaps rallying children into the workforce, producing munitions and that sort of thing.
True.
Oh, gosh, we'll see.
what
We'll
it
see how
takes.
it goes. Hopefully our alliance, our Pinoid alliance, can keep her out and make sure she doesn't show up. But we'll see. We'll
I
have to see how it goes.
I have to say, I find the anti-Pinoid arguments kind of convincing. I have been sort of moving towards this idea that maybe we should move towards a future where there's just a small population of men for breeding because they're more violent, and we just let them have a luxurious life, and they're the breeding stock. I think there might, I might be able to defend this with evidence. I'm working on it.
Yeah, well, that's
I'll
not the
release a
panel for
manifesto
this.
here soon.
On this panel,
Oh, you can do that on another
this panel, we're talking about. Speaking of fantasies, I guess that's one of yours, but we'll see what happens.
It's a lot.
Okay. So yeah, let's
Not
talk
much
about
fun.
it, gang. Let me bring up the prompt so I can read it for the class one more time here. So what today we're going to be talking about is does modern fantasy literature, tabletop games such as D&D, and anime perpetuate real-world harmful racist stereotypes? If so, what sort of impact does it have on society, and should we worry about it? What, if anything, should be done about this? You've heard everyone's opening statements. You've heard everyone's initial stances. Some of them very confident, some of them less so. And yeah, let's discuss it, gang. Thanks for the follows. If you in chat during this discussion want to participate, please, give your questions to things and maybe we'll bring them in. But yeah, I'm going to open it up to the panel and we're just going to get into this, gang. So I am curious, Katie, you said you formed an opinion after Nicotine gave his initial take.
Yeah.
So
and then I listened to two
educate
more
us
of
then.
those takes.
Yeah, did you
and
form
I'm
2
like,
more opinions?
3 more opinions. Yeah.
it's the same fucking opinion to the 3. It's like,
Okay.
wait, you brought me on I was supposed to be on their side, and now you're forcing me to do like the SJW
I
thing
am
because
not
you bring a bunch
forcing
of like 3
anyone.
cringy dudes to whine about being like
Wow,
hurt
you're calling
that
us
their
cringy?
Cringe is in
fantasy
the eye
is
of the
being
beholder.
destroyed.
Ooh.
Hey, these cringy dudes are very fragile and very sensitive.
Yeah, why are
get
you
that.
doing that?
It's why you're so
language.
whiny about
So,
this,
here's-
right?
here's-
Yeah.
Here's
Why?
the
It's why
thing.
it's so important.
Here's the thing, right? So there are some test cases that
Test case.
there are some cases that yes, there are stereotypes that are being portrayed that are negative in certain fantasy genres and certain fantasy titles. But for the most part, I don't think that's necessarily true. But like I said, there are some cases to where yes, you could probably put that up there. I think Harry Potter is a big one.
Really? With the
But-
goblins?
With the
Yeah.
goblins, yes. So, like 100% with the goblins.
Yeah.
See, I actually thought about that. I want to ask Yamato what, because like I might have to join you on this, but I need to first know what your actual position is before I can join forces to fight the fragile crew.
Yeah.
Well,
Fragile males.
Well, they are. Well, fragile. Okay. There are like stuff, especially like when we talk about like anime. There's stuff like Attack on Titans that view the Eldians as essentially Jewish people. When we get like to season 3 and season 4, you start to see them as they start to wear the
Saxon.
What, did something happen?
Like the red or the yellow armband, essentially.
The red and the yellow armband. How they're the most hated people. How they're the people that cause the strife in the world. Like everyone comes together to initially hate on these people, and it's in you can.
We got a new challenger, gang.
Who
We
is
got a new
it?
challenger. The Pyro Tyrant is here.
Pyro.
The Pyro Tyrant has entered the building, gang. He was able to sneak past Stardust's,
Stardust's
blockade.
Stardust's barrier. The evil,
Yes,
the evil
and get
Stardust
in
Man.
here on this thing. So, hey man, how's it going?
Listen, I couldn't very much ignore my responsibilities during meat time, could I? Right? Like,
It's
you
the
know how
meat
it
time. Meat time,
it's
baby.
meat time.
Meat.
It's the meat zone. The meat train.
The midnight
Love it,
meat
yeah.
train.
The
Okay, well,
midnight meat train.
gang, Pyro's really cool. He missed his opening statement though because he's late, so that's the punishment he's going to have to face.
After
but I'm sure he'll get
after
it.
I finish, because I wasn't done. Like we see this with the Eldians and like how they're depicted, like how they're the central race that did everything wrong, and like how it's their fault, and like how I think the Marlians are treated as this force. They have zeppelins. They're like Germany and stuff like that. So that's one case. We have another case of Pokemon with Jinx, which is supposed to be people meme and call her the blackface Pokemon. So like, but those are my cases. I know Pyro has a few.
Yeah, I can toss some more in there. But I guess I would have to ask you, like, okay, what do you think about it? What's so it's an issue, I assume?
It could give some negative. It's like the creator was trying to reference it, but like he did it in the wrong way, where you could get negative depictions from these people. It wasn't properly done, where people can get like a negative feeling from this anime. It was also called anti-Semitic, which I don't believe, but I believe that the anime.
Can I ask a question? Do you think there can ever be like a piece of media, so like anime or book or like a fantasy thing or whatever, where people describe this group that is like controlling everything and are like in the shadows and they're really rich and powerful, but it's like a secret society kind of thing, and that wouldn't for some people signal like, oh, it's a Jew metaphor?
Yeah, but like when you do things that are like really close to World War II, and you like make it almost identical, it's kind of hard to separate those things.
Okay, so like the context would change.
Yeah,
if the author is
what I
trying
mean,
to actually signal that.
Yeah,
it's
like if he's trying to signal that this is wrong, this should have never happened. He should do it in a way where it doesn't come off as, well, this is just something like very offensive. Like there were a bunch of people that felt offended by this, right? It caught a lot of flack. People didn't like the ending, and they didn't think that the World War II aesthetic was needed to be in I would say Attack on Titans.
Okay.
That's not. I mean, it's also like all anime really. Like anime's portrayal of black people like notoriously is just racist, like 100%.
I didn't even get to the part where they Oh, continue.
But like with Attack on Titan specifically, I mean, there is that kind of, even from the first episode, there is that kind of undertone that it has a lot of like Germanic and not really Nazi symbolism. You don't get that until later, but like especially in the first episode and in the manga, there's a lot of German heritage and like old German heritage and Nazi symbolism in the manga. So
I think if we're yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think if we're speaking about anime, like Yamato, we've been on this panel before, and you know my opinions about this. Like, anime is like 100%. Like the way they depict black people, it's just straight up racist shit. Like it's not subtle, it's not anything. And to be fair, they don't really care about it. They don't seem to, and it's just not a big deal for them, so they don't mind it. They don't catch like a lot of backlash from the main Japanese audience for doing that type of crap, and it's been happening for years.
Yeah, but
not just with black people, they also depict like Chinese people in a really racist
like
way. And
like if you would there is a anime called Drama One Half, and there apparently is this like Chinese character, right? He's supposed to know everything. He has the Chinese hat on his head, and he is so racially drawn, it's so bad.
What I just wanted to add, that like with the World War II aesthetic, a thing that is also really common in anime is like just really pushing in on like World War II aesthetic and specifically German aesthetic. They love that shit. You have a lot of German naming in a lot of animes. They do the uniforms, they do the symbols. It's like Japan is very into that shit.
So one,
So I don't. I
One of
think
my-
it's
one of my
just
favorite-
like
one of my favorite animes is Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
They're huge into like the German and Nazi symbolism on that show. Like it's very like undertoned and very hushed, but like it's very very big in that anime.
I mean,
So-
that's why
okay,
I'm
What
not
exactly
very.
do you mean by Nazi symbolism?
well,
Well,
the
well, to be okay, go ahead.
well the leader of the leader of the military is called the Führer King Bradley. His he has kind of the Hitler stash. He has an eye patch over his eye, but that's just to like hide the fact that he is a homunculus. There is this this war going on between this group of people that are brown called the Ishbalans. It was an extermination war that literally happened when they were like wiping them all out. They used them for human transplantation. They basically did experiments on them for the most part.
They
I was-
put them in concentration camps.
Concentration camps and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was that depicted as a good thing in the show?
No, that was depicted as a
No.
very bad thing.
No, it was
Because-
depicted as a really,
Okay.
really bad
Yeah,
thing.
I
So
think
I
there's
guess
an
my
important
question.
there's an important distinction here between symbolism and iconography, right? Because in
Yes.
symbolism means there's a meaning behind it. They're trying to draw something from it. There's a value statement necessarily involved. Whereas iconography can be a little bit more aesthetic and a little more surface in nature. So it's like you have a super powerful nation that is tyrannical, and it's like, okay, what do super powerful nations that are super tyrannical have have in common? It's like these weird kind of symbols of like golden eagles, iron crosses, marble floors, pillars
And I
everywhere.
agree with you
It's also
generally,
worth-
but that was kind of the point that I was trying to make. That's like in animes, especially with the way they harken to like German aesthetic, it even if it's the bad guys, it's still very much glorified. Like in Full Metal Alchemist, the people that we are following, all the protagonists, all the people that we care about, like Roy Mustang, like they are the people who committed the atrocity.
Yeah,
okay?
they in
I
their
just wanna
own
point
in
out
their
that-
own ideology, they are the heroes. They like it. You
Just
So
let's
this
let
is com-
Professor Meat get in real quick, and then
Oh, yeah, I just
we'll
wanted
go.
to point
Professor
out-
Meat, we'll let you Yamato respond, and then we'll go to Nicotine, and if anyone else wants to just
Yeah, I just wanted to point out because I think Nick pretty much hit the nail on the head and where I was going with this. But in the particular, I just wanted to point out that it's sort of demonstration of this is like, for example, with our interpretation of the word Führer here, I think it might be a little bit of an American bias because unless, just a quick Google, I think that Führer is just German or something for tyrannical leader. So this might really just be
It's
more of a
not.
German
It's
thing.
just leader. It's the word for leader, but they don't use it because Führer was Hitler. so they
What
don't.
I'm looking up describes
use
it
it a
as
lot.
a tyrannical leader specifically in its usage. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not looking at a. I don't know. I don't know if I'm looking at authority on German language. but
If
at
you're
least
in
it's what it is.
Germany and you say Führer and you call anyone that, that's
Mhm.
they don't use that. It's not one of the words that they like because of World War II.
Well, it is a negative word. I mean, it's I'm sure that. So you're saying I get what you're saying. You're saying that there's in Germany there's a specific connotation that they relate to World War II specifically with it in the same way that Americans. do.
Yeah, they have a lot of that.
So in the show though, was the person was the tyrannical leader? Were they like?
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they were the bad
Oh.
guy.
and then ended up being a demon
then-
in disguise.
So then is Nazi iconography is why is having Nazi iconography or even
Well,
Nazi
they
symbols
also
in your
did
show of that?
have Iron Cross iconography on their uniforms. Like,
Yep.
That's kind of a big thing that they had.
Yeah.
It was like Iron Crosses. I think I think maybe one or two episodes had a golden eagle you could see
Yep.
in the background.
And marble floors and pillars.
Yeah, and marble floors and pillars. The treatment of the Ishvali is pretty much just reminiscent of the treatment of the Jewish people during the Holocaust.
Although I heard there was also some inspiration from the Iraq War for that one. So
there was
for the original, like for the
original.
2008, yeah, there was a lot of Iraq War symbolization from it.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if you even need to go to Iraq War. Like you can look to like the Byzantine front of the war in during World War II. Like there's a bunch of shit going on in the Middle East that fits even better.
They end up like when it got to the end of it, they ended naming them the Reich at one point in time. they were obsessed with the occult, but that's like something like that's way out there. There's a couple of other things, like, I mean, yeah, everybody had German names, but that's kind of like it was set kind of in like the Middle European Germany at the time. Yeah, there's a bunch of symbolism on that iconography. But like the big one was like the iron crosses on the uniforms and the way they treat the Ishtaals, especially in that.
What I was trying to say is like it's not about this specific anime. Like we can take every specific anime and like hyperanalyze iconography versus symbolism, whatever.
Let's not do that. Let's
yeah,
try
exactly.
to keep it more high level here and things like that. I guess the question I have for all of you is, okay, so we've identified this. We've identified this kind of aesthetic that's in anime, and specifically since this happens to be.
I do not know much about anime.
Me neither. So my question is this harmful? Does this create harm, or is it simply just kind of weird to see? Nick.
Oh, I don't need to cut in right away. I just want to opt in on that.
Well, someone answer my
cool.
question.
So I get. Wait, hold on. So I am gonna focus in on Fullmetal Alchemist just a little bit as a test case, and I completely agree with Katie and Zigmover and Black Yamato that these comparisons are one-to-one. It is obvious that the creators drew inspiration from Nazi Germany and were depicting Nazi Germany. And like Katie said, I completely agree with this too, that the individuals in Fullmetal Alchemist were all the characters that you know and love are the people that did the atrocities and are the officers in this German Reich that we experience. The interesting thing, and so this is where it comes into your question, Wick, of whether it's harmful and whether it's not harmful. I think there's a way that this form of media can be harmful. I think Fullmetal Alchemist is a great example of where it wasn't harmful, because we start off with this poor understanding of this like empire that Führer Bradley leads, and as we go on, we start to see all of the underpinnings of this. The main characters all start to realize that the regime is kind of underhanded, that it's corrupt to the core. You start to learn more and more and more about all of the evil things that are going on, and the characters start to have this awakening, inevitably leading to them fighting Führer Bradley, realizing that the all of their leaders are evil, and having like PTSD over all of the atrocities that they've done, and then they destroy the regime because they've realized that it's evil and that they've been a part of it the entire time. So I think it's the most responsible sort of arc that we can use to harken towards this period, and that's it.
That's where I can agree with you. Fullmetal Alchemist did it responsibly, but something like Attack on Titan, it was irresponsible, and it just seemed like it was all thrown together, and there was no actual meaning from it, like to learn from it. It was just like, well, we're in Nazi Germany, these are the bad guys, that's it, right? It just, to me, it just seemed like it didn't go well with the series, and you didn't learn anything from it.
If you want to say that it didn't go well with the series, I feel like that's a criticism just of the quality of the series. But I feel like I don't see why you would. I have trouble substantiating the claim that they did it irresponsibly, because it sounds like they just had bad guys. The bad guys were bad. That makes sense. They targeted an ethnic group, but then that begs the question of, is having a bad person target an ethnic group or a country that has a majority ethnicity or anything like that, is depicting that categorically bad and irresponsible in fantasy or otherwise? And that doesn't seem like a very tenable claim to me. So then I would ask, why exactly is it irresponsible and bad?
So, to try and maybe steel man Yamato's point a little bit, because like I've had these thoughts with Attack on Titan. I love the anime, and like I just want to make sure, like, are y'all good if I spoil the anime? Because like this kind of
I'm going to.
No, it's too new.
Okay, it's too new. Okay, so like I won't go into heavy spoilers.
Gang. I'm getting reports that our defensive lines have been breached. Starlin has arrived, and oh my God, she's here. Hydropenoids. Let's go. She breached our line. She breached our defenses. Oh my God, we have the one, the only Starlin with us right now.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry I'm late. How's it going, guys?
Good.
We're deep into the topic, though. Much to my
We are
chagrin,
too deep.
it immediately
deep.
focused on anime.
Yeah.
But hopefully,
Because
no-
it's the most gratuitous
Yeah,
example.
I don't
Well,
watch anime.
I actually want to fix this, Wick. Do you mind if I
Please.
try?
Oh, please, yes.
So
And
again,
yeah, go ahead.
I tried to say this earlier. Like zeroing in on like specific animes, like we can answer Meat's point without having like to take a specific anime and like example it with the anime, right? It shouldn't be like a complicated claim to why when an author depicts stuff that are generally stereotypical, how that could be perceived as irresponsible way of writing if you think that an author is obligated to engage with that type of thing responsibly. I, for example, don't. So it wouldn't be my argument, but I think if you're going to say an author has a certain level of responsibility to try to avoid certain stereotypes or try to not send a certain message with their story, then that would be the argument that you'd make, basically.
I definitely agree with the second one.
So Yamoto or Pyro, if you want to engage with that, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, the point I was gonna make earlier before we got invaded, the sovereign chat got invaded by the Stardust Empire, you know. I was just gonna say the point, like with the Attack on Titan and animes like it, I can kind of understand the point they're coming from because while they're trying to represent this, they muddy it a bit when they add in like a bunch of the story elements that we know and love that might make the historical allegory a bit weird. Like we're talking Attack on Titan and the Holocaust. Gets a bit weird when we add in the fact that, and this isn't a spoiler, this is just Attack on Titan. The motherfuckers on this island, motherfuckers on this island can unironically turn into like giants that go around eating people. So
Well,
that
the thing
throws
that-
that in, it throws a wrench in the whole like allegory to the Holocaust shit. Because like there wasn't with the Nazis. It wasn't like Jews could turn into giant monsters that ravaged the Rhineland or some shit like that.
The problem that I have with that argument and why like I felt most comfortable like making this conversation about anime like is what I will be the best at. So I don't mind this conversation, right? But the argument that I was trying to make earlier about like racist depictions of Black people or Chinese people, or their constant like harkening to like German Nazi symbols and iconography, is that it feels like an allegory because a lot of animes just inject the German shit in that because that's just what they do. It's just very common, and they don't perceive it to be the super negative, like immediately, oh, this is like Nazi iconography, surely I must hate this person. Like
Well,
my argument was going to be that a lot of people, like in a lot of anime, that iconography is actually like celebrated. They are the cool guys. A lot of the times the good guys are just guys that served like in Germany or that are meant to be the Germans in this allegory. So it's just a problem when you take animes and you dissect them as an allegory for like Nazi Germany just because they use German iconography. Because I don't think it's intended to be that way. We just interpret it that way because it's like, okay, there's German iconography, so surely this is an allegory. And I just don't think the creators see it that way. And I think that's an absolute problem. Like
Oh, I
the
wanna-
idealization that happens.
Yeah,
is
I
a
want
problem.
to. I want to question you on that, Katie. I'm going to ask my question. Then I want to hear what Stardust thinks about this whole thing. Give her a chance to have like an opening statement, if you will. But my question on that is like, we didn't like the Nazis because they were terrible fascists. They killed people. They hurt people. What they dressed as, how they looked, that didn't matter. That isn't what made them bad. That isn't what made them a terrible thing that we should push back against. So
Okay.
my question is, they like the uniform. Is that necessarily harmful? Is that bad? Like, are someone gonna be like, wow, you have cool uniform, I guess I have to go kill minorities now? I just don't see that connection there. I'll let you respond, and I
mean-
want Stardust to get a chance to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I like painting my face black and making my lips super red. Like, why do you have to make it weird? Like it's somehow is a problem. I don't understand this argument, Wick. It's really weird, right? Obviously there's context. You can't just be like, oh, I like Nazi iconography, so I'm just gonna use it. And if you infer context from that I'm trying to convey through a visual medium a certain message with my iconography, well, you're just reading into things. Now, my argument has always been that Japan has never done any like introspection about World War II, and they were allies with Nazi Germany, so they just don't perceive it in the negative way that Western countries do. So for them, like using the German iconography, it's just like cool shit. You know, it doesn't mean to them what it means to Western audiences. But like in a movie, if you put German iconography, it's there to convey a message because it's a visual medium. It's part of its job, you know? So I don't think, yeah, sure, they think the uniforms are cool. And yeah, there have been other like authoritarian regimes that use uniforms like that, but they use German names. They use words like Führer, which is explicitly like Hitler shit. You know, so it's not like they're saying, oh, we just like authoritarian aesthetic. No, it's very specific, like Nazi Germany stuff.
Agree.
That's not great.
I think I need to listen just a little bit longer before
Sure,
I comment
sure.
on this.
Take
Yeah,
your time.
yeah.
But yeah, just
Can I
jump
just
in.
quickly elaborate? I'm sorry that I'm when I'm saying that it's not great, I'm not personally saying that like it's an author responsibility to like fix that. I think that the fact that it's so prevalent across so many different types of like animes is a problem because it is negative that they don't see Nazi Germany as a negative, as far as I understand.
Okay, Pyro, you got your, and then Nick, and yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree a lot with this sentiment. Like, it's probably going to be surprising to a lot of people, but like, I actually agree a lot with it. I don't think when we're talking about things like literature or video games or media, and we talk about like these negative ideologies like racism, homophobia, or sexism, I don't think that when we see these things in video games, it necessarily has to be like, oh, it was intentionally put there. Because there can be like the fascist iconography that Katie and we're all talking about when it comes to animes. She's right, like there can be certain animes that play off this trope where it's like, yes, we do have our giant empire and we do refer to our leader as the Führer King and whatnot, but then the story itself is these literal military dogs figuring out, like Nicotine said, that their country's terrible, and like at the end of it, like you're cheering them on when they're legitimately fighting in the capital and like taking it over, and they're like, yeah, we did it, yeah! And like you're cheering them on. So like I think it depends a lot on how like the people who tell these stories tell them. And I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh no, you can't tell your story, but I will say like, and maybe the messaging isn't good. Like I liked you know, Full Metal Alchemist's messaging, like when it came to their type of you know, critique on governmental structures and whatnot, and like the problems and whatnot. I didn't necessarily, and like this is a completely wildly different medium. It's not anime, so like don't get. I didn't necessarily like the way Zootopia tried to handle a topic, or something that was like really fucking serious.
How did
Because while
Zootopia try to handle a topic?
they tried to tackle the topic of like the drugs
drug
in
war.
the system
The
and the
drug
drug
war.
war, and like watching the movie for the first time, I was cool with it, and then I watched it a couple more times, and I realized like the way they go about it is really fucking weird. Like as a society, they're just like, oh, punish all of the predators, keep the predators away, you gotta segregate the predators. And it makes sense because like predators prey, one of them's gonna eat the other, and then it's like the analogy they're trying to pair it with the lesson it doesn't make sense, because then we have to sit here and be like, in the real world, are people who take drugs just inhibitly just like turning off their reactor in their mind where they can act on their basic instincts, or is it a fucking drug?
I was really happy with Zootopia when I watched it, and I was like, oh, that's such a smart like racial allegory. I like this. And then I watched this like critique of the movie, and after watching it, I felt so stupid because they were like pointing out how like incredibly destructive and coercive.
Yeah.
Here's the
Not
thing, though.
coercive, like harmful
We-
those allegories were, and I felt kind of cringy that I liked the movie in the first place and didn't notice how disgusting it actually was.
It's not just like Zootopia. It's like talking about anime. A popular one was Beastars. Like everyone was raving about
It's
Beastars.
just
with
the
little
same
bunny,
story.
with the little
find
bunny
them
and the wall.
Beastars.
It was amazing, Katie. I loved it.
I love
Legoshi is Bay. But then it runs into the same problem where it's like, oh, we have this discrimination in our society, and when we watch the media, we want to like make analogies to real world shit. But in the world, that discrimination is a little bit legitimate because half of the population
Okay,
has
just to
dangerous
interject,
fangs.
I want to get some other people in
Go
on
ahead.
this. I know Nick had his hand raised, and Professor Meat and Stardust afterwards. So Nick, Professor
Oh.
Meat, Stardust, and then we can.
Cool. So I was gonna say, like, I agree with pretty much 100% of what Katie said on the face. So the notion that, like, if Japanese creators or any creators are digging into kind of like fascist Nazi iconography and what word did you use? Glorifying it. That would be really irresponsible messaging, really irresponsible storytelling. I think I disagree though, insofar as the notion that the Japanese are really naive and silly with their utilization of Nazi iconography and European iconography in general. It seems like a lot of the time they have a pretty good understanding of kind of like the things going on there. Like, again, sorry to go back to, no, I won't go back to Full Metal Alchemist.
No,
It seems
fuck
there's a common theme of, you know, glorifying it because it's cool, glorifying it because your favorite characters, the good guys, are part of this regime, and then the characters realizing the regime wasn't everything that it was meant to be, and then tearing it apart from the inside. To me, that's a good allegory. That's a good story. That's the Japanese showing that they have an understanding of these topics and a moral imperative to show that, you know, good characters, good people will rebel against the system, or ought to
Can
rebel
I
against the
respond to
system.
that?
Sure.
I was asking Wick. You
Just
don't
really
moderate this.
Really quick. Yes, just really quick though, because other people. have
The
to
issue that I have with it is that if every anime does this, I said naive because I don't want to assume malice, right? I actually think they just think it's cool and they're not that mad at Nazi Germany. Like, honestly, that's literally my take. I don't think they give a fuck. Not really.
Okay.
Generally speaking, but it's a problem when your allegory for Nazi Germany is that a bunch of good people who just had like a bad governance like came together and overthrew the government. Because that's not what happened, right? You're giving a redemption arc to Nazis.
Yeah, like nothing gets
basically,
solved.
in
Like
every fucking anime. It's absurd.
it's like if nothing gets solved, the Nazis of yesterday become the good guys. That's it.
Yes,
I
they were
ran into
actually
this-
the good guys all along.
Yeah, that's
ran
what
into
Germany
that-
is today.
We were just
ran
trying
into
to
this
change the
problem
system
when
from the
reading-
inside.
I ran into this problem when reading a book series by Harry Turtledove. It's wild as shit. Aliens invade in World War II, which is about as ridiculous as it sounds. And like one of the problems I ran into is like, it's World War II. And the author wrote an amazing book series, kind of glossed over the fact
Don't you
that
talk about Harry Turtledove? He's one of my favorites.
no, he's one of my favorites too, but like one of the things that is a criticism is like he kind of glossed over the fact that like he did kind of just make the Nazis a world power that have to be contended with. And like he doesn't shy away from the fact that they
Yeah,
are
but
Nazis
that was
and they do
the
horrible
the
shit.
what if scenario, right? That was the what if scenario. What if in the middle of World War II, alien species came down and invaded the world? What would happen? What would take place? That's
And you
what
know
he
what,
left
you know what, you know what, Wick? When the aliens come down and they don't even go as far as the fucking Germans, and yet they're still like Nazi characters, I have to be like, yeah, I want to root for them.
You
When there's an
don't have
action,
to root for
hold up,
them.
hold up. When there's an
It seemed like this
actual,
book- this-
no, but like you say that, but the way the book is written, I do, because it's either like I root for the humans overall, or the aliens trying to take over and conquer
made-
Earth. I'm
okay.
fighting for the freedom fighters or the invaders. And in the book,
it's not that
cut and
simple to
dry.
do. You know this because some of the aliens were very.
Wick,
Very
you
good
asked
people.
if it's
But
responsible.
I do want to get more people in.
Wait,
So-
just because it's your favorite book, don't mean you
Be
can.
like,
you can-
I didn't
Look,
even
I'm
get to
just
my
saying.
point because like in like this genre of literature, alternate history. that
Pyro,
there
I'm gonna
is,
have to cut you off because we got more people, and then
There
we're
we
gonna
go.
go into it.
You
but we need to
criticizing
get
his
a-
favorite
I
book.
can't even get a
Right.
word in. I can't even
What,
can't even get
No,
a word
Pyro,
in.
this is why I wasn't
Uh,
worried about being on a panel with you. What's going to be a responsible moderator?
Pyro, please. Or
Sure,
not?
sure.
No, Steve.
Sure.
Professor Meat, please. And then we'll
you.
continue. Professor Meat, yes, go.
So, all right, I'm going to try go through a lot of stuff really quickly. I don't know exactly what people's points are, but it sounded like there was a lot of equating with Nazi iconography with German iconography. I think a lot of Germans would find that very offensive. I might even be in the beginnings of a
Right
Steelman
down.
argument for why maybe the way that we associate Nazi symbolism with German symbolism might actually be problematic with the way we think about Germans. Maybe that's kind of shitty, but
Pretty
on a more
SJW of you.
I want to put, yeah, I know, right? I might be coming over to your side. But more importantly than that, my main fear here is this predator-prey interpretation of Zootopia. I have not seen Zootopia. I don't know if it qualifies as fantasy. I have put up my armies across the borders of fantasy genre, but in the interest of Zootopia's sake, I will try to defend it as well. This is the problem. Predator-prey, oh, great racial analogy, and then a human's mind turns and thinks enough and can ascribe some kind of racial attributes or negative narrative to Zootopia. It was great. And then I watched a YouTube video in which someone was very clever and creative and was able to fictionalize some kind of narrative that they were able to like logically consistently apply. The human creativity, narratives are in the eye of the beholder. Human creativity will always be able to ascribe some type of problematic narrative to just about everything. And if someone hasn't done it, then send it my way and I'll fucking do it for them, okay? So I just need some kind of metric that sounds realistic or existent even to like parse out when something is problematic versus when someone has just like really cleverly created some kind of narrative that they've been able to ascribe to it, you know?
That
Oh,
is
like-
not what I did, but it makes sense that you don't get it because you
I don't
didn't
know
even
what
watch
it-
the movie. so
You never.
Okay,
you,
so, like, I-
you
this
should have.
was my-
Okay,
Yeah, we're all
alright.
talking about, is it
Hey,
fantasy?
one at a
I
time.
mean, it
One at
is-
a time. Time out.
This was my
Pyro,
point, I can
Pyro,
actually
you can
defend it.
respond, and then we want Stardust in. So Pyro and then Stardust. Stardust's been waiting super patiently. So Pyro quickly, and then Stardust, please.
No, I'll go as quick as I like. So it's like it's very simple. Like when talking about Zootopia, one of the biggest things that people are like, "Yo, this is an analogy for the drug war," is that like the drug that was making animals turn crazy was like a berry or some shit that could just be found out in farmland everyday buckfuck, and it was a government official that came and synthesized this because they saw a problem within society and said, I'm gonna use this to make society think about this group of people the way I want it. And not even just this one film theorist, a bunch of people looked at that and say, hey, it's a lot like how the government did shit with drugs and they made the society think about black people a certain way. And then like people said like it's a good analogy because by the end of the movie the little bunny officer's like, yo, this is bad, we shouldn't do this, predators are just like us, we're all the same, we're all part of Zootopia, we should feel good. And then it breaks down because biologically they're animals, they're not like fantasy creatures. Biologically, a tiger next to a little sheep on a train, I can understand why a society would deem that as a danger. Biologically, predators are designed to destroy prey and consume them. Unfortunately, when we take that analogy that people have noticed in the movie and like tried to make it analogous to real life, there's not that analogy. But when we look at like something like the drug war, there's not something inherent to black people's nature that makes them more violent just by their nature, that if they take this magical drug, it'll wipe away all of their consciousness and they'll be the violent black again. There's not that, but in Zootopia there is. There's the berry where if you eat it, you'll become the violent tiger, the violent wolf.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Mr. Adam.
Stardust. Stardust. We're gonna let Stardust
So I
go.
think that's a great analysis. I think that there's definitely something to be explored there, especially when we think about how we see like certain arguments coming back into the fold, right? We see like just like a lot of race realist arguments coming back into the fold, that certain races have different like inherent differences, right? And I don't want to ruin anybody's fantasy games, right? But World of Warcraft, I would play, and it seems a little bit racist that orcs are like inherently a certain way, and like I know it's weird to be like, yo, that's a little bit racist, but like I would look at that, I'd be like, huh? This is a little bit. This feels racist. I mean, it's just for fun, right? And same thing with Zootopia. Like Zootopia, like what are you gonna do, right? The plot of Zootopia, they're all animals, and it makes sense, like in their world, that they're animals. But when you take it and you apply it to the real world, then it's like, okay, there may be a translation error here, because like while it makes sense in their world, it doesn't make sense in our world, right? One really good movie I really liked was District 9. Do you guys remember District 9?
Yeah, holy
Love
fuck.
that
I was
movie.
actually
That's a
gonna
good
watch that.
movie.
I was actually gonna watch that yesterday, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent movie, and I think it actually like it really I think it demonstrates like a variety of topics really well. And in a way, like you want to dehumanize the aliens per se. You want to do that, but as the movie goes on, you can't help but humanize them. And I think that's a really effective way, really effective device, right? They're quite literally aliens that are like part like bug, you know? Like what is more disgusting than that, right? But as you go on in the movie, you really do humanize the aliens more, and you empathize with them. And despite not understanding them and not understanding like what they are, and maybe being taken aback by the way that they look, like you still see like a child alien with a dad alien. You still like feel something for that child. I don't know. I think it's a very effective movie for that.
So maybe
Responsible even.
it's the way, it's not the fact that movies and games and anime and literature has these problematic elements. Maybe it's the way that the author or the creator uses those elements. You cannot defeat a bad guy that doesn't exist. You cannot subvert a narrative without having problematic things in that narrative. And I think Star Trek did this very well. It would take these races and show them as one thing, all one thing. Like you'd have the guys with the ears. I forget what their name.
Balkans.
No, not the Balkans. The Ferengi. The Ferengi, that's it. And they were all corporatists, greedy, etc. But then through the show, you would find that no, that's not how they are naturally. That's just a social, cultural construct. And the narrative that you thought would be subverted, and you would realize, oh shit, this is why they have this there, to show it how wrong it is, to show us how it's not a good thing. And unless you have those stories, whether it be through the medium anime, whether it be through the medium video games, whether it be through the medium of literature, you cannot address and look at these topics and explore them. Katie, and then Professor Meat, and then Pyro.
Can I add one thing real quick?
Oh, yeah, yes, real quick.
Yeah, I think, again, like, I just want to emphasize how powerful it is. You start off this movie with these aliens that are, like part prawn or whatever. They live in a different camp. They're disgusting. They're portrayed disgustingly, right? They're quite literally, like, you look at them and you're like, that's disgusting. They're not human. They're quite literally not human. They look awful, right? But I think it is effective that they are humanized by the end of the film. By the end of the film, you realize what they're doing to these creatures is wrong, right? Just so wrong on so many levels. So
I want to engage with the original prompt, right? So we've pointed out a lot of issues, which I think is good. In terms of responsibility, I think for me, what it comes down to is how close is this meant to be an allegory versus is this fantasy? So I agreed to come on the panel because I really want to hear Yamato and Pyro's and now Stardust opinions about like the orcs thing in fantasy, because I am too ignorant about that to have an opinion about that specifically. But for example, some movies, Zootopia was branded as like a good allegory for racial relations. That's a problem. If you're going to call your story an allegory, then you're going to have to deal with critique when your allegory is fucking toxic as shit, right? And fantasy authors like have much more of a pass on it as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care about the J.K. Rowling like goblins thing. I don't know if she's anti-Semitic. I don't really care. It doesn't. For me, it doesn't matter. Fantasy. I would need to hear about the orcs thing. Maybe I'll change my mind. But if you're going to sell your product as like realistic or has to do with our reality, with our planet as an allegory, I'm drawing for real life things, you know, like Handmaid's Tale. The author for that book that like the show is based on, she's like, I drew everything in my show is actual events that happened in history across different cultures. I just mashed them all together, you know? So then when she says stuff like that, I'm going to judge that work differently than someone just compiling their own magical world. And yeah, there's a conspiracy theory in there, and there's a powerful group that controls debate. Okay, it's not the same thing.
It isn't just the goblin thing for Raleigh.
It's
Sorry,
just-
go ahead.
Zig hasn't been in a while, so Zig,
Alright,
get
that's
your
fine.
point in, and then we'll go to me.
Like in Rawlings' works, they have house elves, which are actually like an allegory to like slavery. They have every
Are they,
single.
They're
Yeah,
literal slaves.
They're literal slaves.
They're literal slaves, like house.
No,
slaves.
that I'm not saying that you can't see it as an allegory. I'm saying that the intent matters to me in that case. You know?
Well, I'm kind of biased. I think J.K. Rowling's a horrible writer and a horrible person. But that's just me.
Me too. I don't
Um,
think she's smart enough to write a good allegory.
So I think like I had a discussion with a guy earlier in the chat. Every single one of her characters that she displays as a character of an opposite race is a tokenism of a racial stereotype of some sort. They have stereotypical racial names, and they actually envision the racial stereotype within the book. Not so much in the movies, I don't think. I'm not too familiar with the movies. I never really. The only movie I really watched were definitely Hollows 1 and 2. But like in the books, they're all tokenisms. All the characters that are depicted of a different race are tokenisms. You know, the house elves are very, very much like depicted as they are slaves, and the goblins are obviously depicted of like Jewish people. You know, it's pretty bad there. But like I agree with both of y'all's sentiments as far as if it's using it as a sort of allegory, using it as a learning tool or a tool to further to make it to where the narrative is teaches a lesson or inhabits the narrative in a good way, I think it's fine. Other than that, I don't like the stereotypes like that when used all willy-nilly and disrespectful like the way Rowling does, but that's just me.
Sure. Okay. Meet.
Okay,
Then
so
Pyro, then Nick. So,
real quick, I just wanted to say I did agree with Katie. Bringing it back to fantasy, I would like to do. I just want to say real quick, because I love Star Trek, Ferengi. I always thought it was super weird that everyone made the like Jewish Ferengi thing, because I look at Ferengi and there's no fucking way in hell, we can bring up a picture if we want. There's no fucking way in hell that everyone would be calling the Ferengi like a Jewish allegory. If like they do not, they're caricature, but they're caricaturesque, but so are tons of aliens on Star Trek. There's nothing particularly Jewish about them. But it's really weird to me that people started being like, "Hey, look how Jewish they look," when they started being like hyper-capitalist. I don't know. I thought that was strange.
mean,
but the
you
thing I
don't-
really wanted to touch on is this. Oh, by the way, based District 9 movie. I think the point you made, Stardust, is very similar to the Metamorphosis with Kafka. Another great example of moving across the line of human towards something else. Breaks down that for people. But here's the thing. While that's great, it doesn't necessarily mean that things that fit into these categories that we can ascribe these racial characteristics to are necessarily problematic if they don't do that. Because here's the thing. Everything is derivative of human behavior. Everything is derivative of human life. And we live at least at least it seems, we experience race as humans, right? So if everything is derivative of human experiences and cultures and nations and ethnicities as they group geopolitically, etc., it sort of begs the question, all right, at what point along the spectrum does something become problematic? Because there's always going to be some ability to ascribe a problematic narrative to any piece of media, as I see it.
okay. We're gonna go Pyro, Nick, Katie, and did you want to hear Yamato or no?
I was gonna say, well, it's gonna be real quick. If you can say that like if these people have like negative qualities that fit one group, they don't essentially have to look like them. They just have to have those negative stereotypes of that specific group. That's like I wasn't really understanding what you were trying to say, but you go to Pyro. But go ahead.
No, Meat, if you want to answer and clarify real quick. Quick.
So the point is that the thing is Ferengi, you can accurately attribute a aspect of the Jewish stereotype to Ferengi. But the thing is that if you break things down enough, I think that in narratives, in groups, in anything like a race or a type or a category of human or being or conscious being or anything like that, it seems like there's always going to be at least some element of your ability to ascribe some kind of stereotype of some negative group to narratives because they're all derivative of human experiences. And so it becomes difficult to parse out exactly what point it becomes problematic. I don't have a clear metric here.
What the fuck? You said
I like when Wick initially brought the question to me and Yamato, it was about the orcs and like D&D and world crafting. So like I do want to tackle that a bit because I have thoughts on that. I think when we do make these broad descriptive statements on an entire race's like system of like whatever, just like based on their nature, like they tend to in D&D, like, oh, orcs, trolls, congratulations, naturally evil because they do something or other. I think that limits the gameplay that allows those players to have when they like you get a player who's like, yo, I do want to play a troll, I do want to play a orc. I think we've seen in stories that we've talked about in anime how like stories can be subversive or like how some cultures can be negative and shit, and then we turn around and we do that and it limits him. And then when we do make allowances for that, by its very nature, it's admitting that, oh, it's not based on race. It can be based on culture. It can be based on how the character is raised. Because multiple times in D&D sessions, I've played as like a troll, a bugbear, a typically evil character. And the compromise I would come with the DM is like, oh, my character was just taken away from like its normal tribe that would normally raise it to be evil. And he was raised by someone else who was just good. And he's just all right now.
I can go next, yeah? Or I could let it, if Yamato wants to go quick, that's cool too.
No, you go, then I go. I was just going to add to his point.
Oh, okay, sounds good.
I think Katie wanted to go get in too, so I'll go after Katie.
Well, yeah, let's let Nick go, then Katie, and then Yamato.
Okay. So I was gonna bump back to Stardust's point, which I think was actually a really good one. When I look at like the orcs are like a big race that people like to look at as a fantasy trope and kind of racialize, and I think that the orcs in World of Warcraft are the one standout what's the word, fucking model of a place where orcs were used in a weird racialized way, where there's a whole bunch of really solid comparisons to black people. So like literally like the orcs come from like a desert planet with full of like scary creatures that are kind of like symbolic of Africa, and their own people bring them through a portal to Azeroth, which is where the white people are, and then the white people fight a war with the orcs and then put them into chattel slavery. So it's like that's one of those few examples where it is like kind of really weird and like pretty racist. World of Warcraft in its like depiction of the orcs is pretty spooky. And then they save it a little bit, I think, by making the orcs good guys. But that's a side note. But then branching out into the rest of fantasy, I think is where we get a problem, where people try to say that orcs in other franchises are racialized to be like black people. And I think that pretty much anyone that has that view is kind of racist and out of pocket. Like there's very, 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 very few examples where these two things kind of like collide. Like if we look at Tolkien's orcs, there's nothing about them that's emblematic of black people. There's nothing emblematic about like most orcs that relate to any one specific race. And I find it really strange that people draw the comparison, but that's just me.
Okay, that's a good point. Like, what does everyone think about that? Katie, I know you were next, and then Yamato.
I actually wanted to engage with Meat for a little bit. So, the problem, I agree with you that you can like extrapolate a narrative onto anything, and I agree with you that any story, any work of fiction or work of nonfiction you can find something problematic, and you'll say if you look for it. I think obviously any type of like creative work is going to have an element that you can critique. So I think what we are yet again like flashing on is that for me, I don't see a problem saying I think it's problematic when this song portrays this trope. Me saying that doesn't mean I want it canceled, doesn't mean I'm mad at the author, doesn't mean I want like the world to burn. It just means that calling out when something might perpetuate something that we as a society don't want anymore is a good thing. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to enjoy that piece of fiction. It just means that now you have another lens to critically look at something that maybe before was being filtered uncritically through. It's
So,
not a problem to call something problematic.
Then can I ask you a question, Katie? Because I guess part of the prompt is, so say we have something like Zootopia, or something that you feel is problematic, is perpetuating negative stereotypes. You would still be okay with people making those kinds of works, and simply
I'm not going to
critiquing them and
restrict
pointing them out?
anyone's work
Okay.
ever.
Okay.
Like people can make whatever work they fucking want.
Okay.
It's just that if that the second part of what I was going to say is that's like there's a difference between calling something out and saying, hey, this group in your piece of fiction seems to hearken to some pretty racist stereotypes. I don't know if you meant that or not. I just notice it, and I don't really like where the story took it once I look at it through that lens. What we can talk about is like responsibility. So you asked Wick earlier, is this harmful? And if so, to what capacity? And I think that's an interesting question. Like, what is the responsibility of an author? What is our responsibility as the audience? I'm not going to tell authors what they're allowed and not allowed to write. I just want to point out when a song has like a negative message that I don't like, if I point that out next to my friends and they might think about it in a way they never had thought before, then that's just adding more critical thinking into the world. It doesn't mean cancel everyone. It just means like, hey, we engage with media in a pretty callous and not a very like introspective way, and maybe that's helping informing negative opinions that we don't actually want to have. It's really not that complicated.
So okay, so Professor Me, I'll let you respond, but Nick had a question also. He wanted to get in real quick. I'll let Nick ask it. He asked me, and I think it's good for the panel. And then so Nick, meet Stardust.
Okay, so I just wanted to pause it really quick. When we use the term racist, if we're going to get into these fantasy tropes, I was just wondering if we're using it in more the classical term or more of like the critical race theory, systemic, and intersectional sort of definition. Just curious.
That's a good question. How when you say these are harmful racist stereotypes, which way do you mean? Can you define that for the class? Yes.
I think it could be both. It depends. Because, like, I think usually you would just argue that it's more systemic racism about how, like, a certain type of characters just seem to have these certain qualities that are typically stereotypical, which is why I still want to hear more about the orc thing. Another thing that happened is that I heard that, like, Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z is, like, black-coded. And I was really confused when I heard that. And I actually asked someone if the only reason that is true is because his skin is green, which was pretty ignorant, but I don't know why he's black-coded otherwise. And then the friend that I asked explained it to me, but I don't understand why. I guess there could be an argument that like negative like races are always depicted with like darker skins, which again perpetuate this narrative. But I don't know. I don't get the orc argument. I would still want to hear more about it. But I think if a story came out that actually someone in World of Warcraft, the board who designed orcs is just like into slavery, you know, then that would just become regular racism, you know? You know?
Okay.
Like,
So I guess
I mean, when we talk about like Piccolo, he is a character that is literally far from home in a place that he does not understand. He is considered a bad guy for once because of the way that he looks. He does do evil things, but he does try to redeem himself and make himself out to be a better person. A lot of black people that I grew up with ascribe that to with them a lot of themselves, so they see a little bit of Piccolo in them because of him trying to redeem himself, be a better person. Like his enemy, he took in the enemy's son and basically raised him, basically taught him everything. So he's kind of the outsider amongst these world of humans and Saiyans, and he's still trying to find his spot. I think that's my reason for considering him black, and a lot of people that I've talked to and hung out with. But like, I'm interested to hear any other person's reasons.
Okay, I want to kind of stick on the orc thing though. The enemy's nice, but I just don't know him.
I mean, I wasn't
I'm
a
sorry,
big
I
word.
don't know
I
anime.
wasn't a big World of Warcraft person.
Uneducated white people, dude. No, I'm
I
just
guess
kidding.
so. It's just my ignorance showing. But you could honestly, you guys can talk about whatever you like here, as long as it's on.
Okay, I want to talk about
Me-
fantasy.
Meat, and then we'll go Stardust, and then whoever
Alright.
else wants.
All right, so just two things. One, so there's some kind of language like it's not bad to call out things when things might perpetuate tropes, and or when you feel like it portrays a trope. But that's the thing, is that these words are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because it seems to me like just about everything could be interpreted as perpetuating a trope. So at what point do we say that it's reaching a point to where it's actually problematic for a society, right? And the other point, if I'm just going to talk about the WoW orcs in particular, I haven't played WoW, but I am interested in this because I don't see how, especially if they're like the good guys, I don't see how them being enslaved is necessarily problematic, even if there's some sort of, which aren't even self-evident to me necessarily, sort of parallels, like self-evidently between black people and orcs that are necessarily perpetuating that trope. Even if that was the case, they're the good guys and they're being enslaved. I don't see how that's necessarily any worse than like 12 years a slave, for example.
Can I quickly respond?
Quickly, and then we'll go Stardust and Pyro.
Yeah. I don't know why. Maybe the word problematic triggers you because you're an SJW. It's possible, right?
What word do you use? I'll use that one.
No, so the thing if you're like examining a piece of media and you don't like what happens there, you're allowed to critique it and say, I don't like that. I think that was bad writing. I think that was whatever. You don't have to call it problematic if it hurts your fifis, okay? That's not the point.
If you don't like the term so much, I can use a different word if it makes you more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm just not understand. Do you think when people say a piece of work is problematic, or they examine like an art and then they say, I think this perpetuates something negative, they're just saying it and they're just sharing that with people? What's so negative about that? Why do we need to find like a rule to when people are allowed to engage with a piece of media?
Because you're equating the fact that something might perpetuate a negative stereotype with the idea that it is perpetuating a negative stereotype.
Am I equating that? When?
Well, if you're not, then I have no idea what your point is, because all you've basically done is make the point that the fact that something might be problematic is ascribed to all media and therefore is a meaningless description. So I don't know what your point is if that's your only point.
I think you can say this piece of media sent this message to me. I did not like that message. Yeah, that is different if you then say it is the author's responsibility to make sure that his piece of media that he created will not do that. I don't say that. I don't think people should say that. Some people are interested in discovering the author's intent. I'm not in anyone's head, so I don't give a fuck about that. But I think that if I engaged with a piece of whatever art and I got a certain message, I'm allowed to say that's the message I got, and I just think that's cringe, you know?
Okay.
Okay,
So
but
we're gonna go really quick, meet, but we need to move on.
I can
We
really
go to
quick, yeah.
Pyro, and then Nick, was Stardust? Were you in here? I forget.
I think I was
She
in
was.
line, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go Stardust, Pyro, Nick, and Zig. Cool.
I just
go
I
ahead,
just
sorry.
wanted to make the point that, like, just because I find like certain parts of World of Warcraft like kind of weird racially, I don't think that there's like some weird responsibility that I'm ascribing to like the authors or the creators of the game. Just like with any TV show, any book, right? Like, I don't think anybody deserves to, like, when you're writing something, you're creating something when you're putting your creativity into the world, I think that that should, for the most part, be pretty like censored. So I don't think it's fair for me to criticize, go after people for the art that they put into the world. I think it's just interesting, you know. And if I find like there's like a theme in there, like specifically the one that I always worry about is like the inherent differences. That's the one that I always look out for. But like I don't think that there's anything wrong per se with putting that out into the world. So
Okay.
Okay.
Pyro,
Um,
please.
I think like I see where the conversation's going. I think I can like I think as a content watcher, content enjoyer, someone who like enjoys the shit that's put out to me. Cause like this goes back into the question that Katie levied to the panel, and then like we kind of like got onto the one part of the topic. What is the responsibility that we have here if we do deem these things as problematic? I think it's very simple because we're talking about like media and shit like that. As a content enjoyer, like we all are, I think it's our job to be critical of our content, criticize it, like look for like these issues that we might individually have, and then like write an honest, good faith critical review of it. As a content creator, part of your job, accept criticism, be receptive to it. That doesn't mean that every time you get some no dick Andy that's like, hey, you need to change your story because women can't swing no action, I heard that from my grandparents, doesn't mean you have to take it seriously, but be receptive to some of the criticism you get. Be receptive to the criticism you get. So like I think that's where like the responsibility lies, because I can definitely understand where it's like some people might not see some of like the problematic shit that other people see, and they're like, wow, that is problematic. I've had that specifically with like the works of Warcraft specifically. Like when it comes to like people attributing them to black people, I was like, yo, really? Wow, you sound like a racist. And then they're like, no, give me a minute. And then I was like, by the end of it, I was like, oh, if I squint hard enough, I can see where you could have come to that perspective. And I think being critical of that, like if that's something I deem as a change, that I want as a change, I can go to their website and be like, hey, this is something I've noticed in your games and blah, blah, blah. I don't like it. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't. But as a content enjoyer, I think that might be like the responsibility I owe. If I deem something as problematic, I can write a critical review of it.
Thanks. Nick, then Zigmover, and then someone's been begging me to get on this panel because they just keep DMing me. They won't stop. And I'm gonna get them on as soon as we get through Zigmover.
Oh no.
So
Somebody
I
about to
just
come in hot and heavy. Oh boy.
I just like to say, Pyro, I think it was very
Wait, check your
problematic when
DMs.
you. I think it was very problematic when you were talking about your grandpappy and women not being able to swing an axe. You took a southern accent. So I think branding the entire kind of like antebellum part of the United States.
What antebellum? I'm from Tennessee, bro. What do you mean? I think it's problematic that you assume that I am being problematic because I assume that you are.
No, that was great. That was my whole point. That was perfect. That was wonderful. The problematic feedback loop. I think we should do it all, man. But yeah.
We can go in the line. Nick is problematic because Katie's problematic because Yamato's assuming she's problematic because Professor Meat is saying Yamato's we could just do it. Content or Boros.
Yeah, so I can
Picking on
actually.
me because I'm a woman. Fuck you.
So
I
we all
can
agree
actually.
being problematic is not problematic. Are we all in agreement?
So I can totally get behind this notion of problematicism that Katie's bringing up. I think it's actually like Giga Chat essentially is like you don't like the way a thing sounds. It bothers you on some level. You think there could be a moral imperative, and you voice that. I think that's super cool. I think criticizing everything is based. The problem I think is that SJWs are not a monolith. And do you identify yourself as an SJW at all, Katie?
No.
Okay, cool. So there's based SJWs that sound sometimes like how Katie sounds, and then there's cringe SJWs that use every criticism as an example to like say, we need to destroy this, we need to get rid of this, we need to get abolish this part of fantasy. Sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude there, Katie. But yeah, I really like Katie's take on it. I just think it's tough when we use the word problematic because there's the phrase problematic has been used as fuel for Twitter mobs to try and cancel things so many times, and they do it all the time now.
Well,
I
what
guess
I
the
would
reason-
like to
Just Katie, you can respond real quick, then Zig, and then we're gonna bring on our new guy, and we'll see.
I would try to ask, I guess, if there was something that many people criticized and like found as a legitimate criticism, so like millions of people have examined this piece of art and they all seem to be pretty on the same page that like it has a problematic element, so an element that perpetuates certain stereotypes. Is it like if they then say, hey, this book has this type of motif, if that bothers you, maybe don't buy that book, is that canceling it? Is that
No.
something negative?
No.
See,
No, I
that
put that
maybe
as a
I don't.
preface for a lot of content, actually. Yeah, if you're sensitive to something, like don't engage with it, right?
Yeah, so I think maybe I don't understand what canceling is, because what it
So,
all it
but-
is to me is not put this
but-
person in
but
jail.
that's not what
In jail,
happens.
it's yeah,
So what
just
happens
don't engage
is
with the
what
person.
they'll do, and let me explain this because this is very important to understand for the audience and for the panel. When we talk about that, at least when I think Nick is speaking of canceling in this way, what they're referring to is people who engage in what's called secondary sanctions. So they say, we don't like this work, we think it's bad, so we don't want to engage with it. And if you sell it or engage with it or do anything with it, we're going to boycott you too. And we're going to use this power to pressure you to no longer hosting this show, no longer selling this book in your stores, no longer doing any of these things. It's like, we don't like it, so no one else can engage with it either. And this happens a lot.
This is bizarre to me. So would you say the same? Are you upset when people boycott Nike because they have children in sweatshops? Should people not do
No.
that?
Of course,
Children in
it's-
sweatshops is more than problematic. That's the whole like
Yeah, that's-
using the
that's
new
not-
term.
Okay,
that's not-
okay.
that's
Oh,
not-
sorry.
that's-
Okay, I get
Yeah.
where the disconnect is. For you, like the threshold for the boycott or like whatever the secondary sanctions is not high enough. So what you guys want to do is be upset at people that are upset at their subjective metrics. So you're like you're upset about something and you are trying to levy your power as a consumer to try to change that thing, but I don't think what you're upset about is actually that valid. So no on you. That just sounds like the same thing to me. I don't know.
I
Well,
think
no,
it's different because
please.
the Nike is like specifically that is an action, like using child labor, right?
No,
Like,
I understand. That wasn't my
Yeah.
argument anymore, because I get that you're saying problematic is not the same as sweatshops. That's good. But then it's like we're mad at people for canceling because what they're canceling about is not worthy of them wanting to leverage their consumer
because
power
it's
to
an
whatever it is
abstract
that they want to do.
concept. It's an abstract concept, right?
What is?
So whatever, if we're talking about like World of Warcraft and how different races have inherent differences, right? It's just like these are abstract races that don't really exist in real life. And although if we try to translate it, it might become a little bit problematic if we try to translate those themes over. It's still not really based in reality, right?
Then can I ask you something about that?
Uh-huh.
So if somebody thinks that World of Warcraft is just racist and like orcs are just a direct equivocation to black people, right? And then they tweet to all of their friends and they like tweet on the World of Warcraft like Twitter all day about how racist they are and how everyone should boycott like Blizzard. Is that a problem?
I think it's annoying, but probably that person would be banned anyways, right? So
Yeah, but there's an issue with them doing that? Like a moral
No.
issue?
I don't think there's an issue with them voicing that. No, I might think that they're being like a little bit hyper, but I don't think there's an issue with.
I'm gonna let Zig in real quick,
Okay.
and then
thought
we're
that
gonna
was
go
canceling
with that
this,
lad.
so.
But no, I just want to say that for
I don't
me,
think that's
I
canceling.
do think that there is a moral problem when you try to enforce your views on others. But that's just
That-
me.
Especially
Zig,
about
please.
art.
So while orcs, specifically in World of Warcraft, are problematic, there are way more problematic races in World of Warcraft that people aren't touching on. Particularly like trolls, very problematic race in World of Warcraft. Tauren, very problematic race. Like Tauren are known as like native savages, and they're like they actually portray like Native Americans in World of Warcraft. Draenei, they're problematic. They portray like Indians, Persians. They even have like the Indian accent if you talk to them. Pandarans, which are pandas. They actually have like fake Chinese accents when you talk to them. They portray Chinese people in a very, very negative light. Gnomes, people kind of attributed gnomes to Jewish people, even though I don't think that's really kind of a case. I think that's a stretch. I think that's more goblins in World of Warcraft, but that's just me. But yeah, there's so much problematic stuff going on in World of Warcraft. It's not just orcs. As far as the orc race and that is concerned, because I'm about to get out of here, I'm about to go see Batman. So about the orc race is concerned is, I think really World of Warcraft is really the only thing I could think of that has that stereotypical parallel in a sense. Tolkien's orcs are way different. Most other fantasy orcs that I've seen don't really have that parallel from what I've seen. The only one that I've actually seen and actually brought up and I could see it is World of Warcraft in particular.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on, Zig Mover. I hope you enjoy your movie.
No
You
problem.
have a very nice voice.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
do. So, gang, go check out Zig Mover. I'll shout him out in chat. And yeah, thanks for coming by, my dude.
All right, thank you. Talk
Yeah,
to all of you.
Mad Lad, then Stardust, then Professor.
Go.
Oh, no.
If I can just reply really quickly, it won't be much. I just wanted to say, like, my issue, I don't have an issue with like these races and how we associate them with like real life races, because I don't think that was the intent. I think what I say when I look at like World of Warcraft and I'm like, oh, that's a little bit weird, is the idea is it's not the races themselves, right? I don't care about the races themselves. It's the idea that different races have an inherent difference from each other, right? That idea in itself is a core idea in, like, for example, race realism. But as far as trolls being Caribbean coded or something like that, like, I'm not super, even if the Draenei have Indian accents, I'm not super bothered by that, right? Everything's based a little bit on reality. Everything's abstracted on reality. It's the idea that there's an inherent difference in races. But even then, I don't know that idea in itself is particularly that harmful in the real world, unless they are taking that idea and actually applying it to the real world, right? So.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so Mad Lad,
So-
then Katie, then Pyro, then Nick.
Imagine
Professor Meek.
having a panel on racism in anime, World of Warcraft, and all this other stuff without inviting me. I like all these things. I don't understand why
You
this
were the
didn't happen.
first
That's
one.
fine.
You were the first person I
fine.
mentioned. Okay,
That's
you
fine.
were the first
That's fine.
person I
We're cool.
mentioned.
Yo,
I
Mad
love
Lad, Mad Lad, how late are you again?
What do you mean?
Very problematic, Mad Lad.
And
Anyway.
Very
wait a
problematic.
minute.
Oh,
Mad Lad.
I'm
We mentioned
me off already.
this to you. Yeah, we mentioned this to you twice when you was in Wick server.
I don't know what you're talking about. All right, moving on. So,
You are fake news.
anyway, I'm just gonna get this out. Jesus. All right, so World of Warcraft. I've been an avid player for a long time. The stuff about the races in the game being reflective of ethnicities in real life, that is an actual thing. So trolls have the Jamaican accent, and then goblins are definitely given like all the stereotypes that are extremely problematic if you're anti-Semitic, like tropes and stuff like that. And while it's not every person who's going to be offended by this stuff, right? Like, I continue to play the game despite the fact that I was like, how I feel about this. I think it's dangerous to actually trust the creators and the creators' intent automatically. Like, we're giving some charity to it, sure, absolutely. But if you've been following the news on Activision Blizzard, I can assure you that some of the stuff that was going in the background was not like PC okay. There's a lot of problematic actors that were on the corporate level and the game design level at the like top echelons of Activision Blizzard doing really fucked up shit. And maybe it wasn't entirely there was like some rumors of racism, but the sexist stuff, abso-fucking-lutely. So like when World of Warcraft actually implemented some changes, like you have to consent to get /kissed, or like they stopped the /spitting or whatever else, I thought that was actually like, some form of growth, because they are listening to the people who are voicing their concerns. And I think there's nothing wrong with voicing your concerns. I don't think you have to say, oh, this is cringe. It's not like the stereotype of the SJW who's like, just doesn't have a sense of humor is like, the entirety of the SJW culture. I think you could look at one person who's like, doesn't have that sense of humor and is kind of just trying to be a spoil sport, right? And then there's like 99 other individuals that you could classify as SJW. And I mean, I think I would consider myself one of those even, who understand the humor. I used to watch like racist stuff and get, a laugh out of it or whatever else. But I also understand how it can hurt people who are particularly sensitive or who have had traumas associated with these stereotypes, right?
So we're gonna go to Katie, Pyro, Nick, and Meat.
Actually, you skipped Nick. He was supposed to go after many other people, so you can give him my turn.
Nick. And then, do you want to go at all, Katie, or?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Nick, Katie, Pyro, Meat. Okay.
I apparently it's been so long I didn't even remember what I wanted to talk about. So you can give Katie my turn.
Oh, God. Wow. Okay. Well, does anyone know what they want to say right now?
But,
Pyro.
yes.
Pyro knows what he wants to say. Pyro, go ahead.
Fine, Pyro, you can take my turn. Give it to me when you're done.
I think Stardust hits on a really valid point because she brought up something I tried to touch on a while back when it comes to like how we inherently set these races. It does play into a lot of what race realism in our current reality actually is. When we talk about racism in the modern sense, unfortunately, it isn't like as clear as, 16th century racism, where I might be like, "Oh, Yamato, you look like a man of Afrique. Tell me, what are the jungles like?" Ooh, ooh. Like, it's not that clear. Scientific racism in the modern day is me insinuating that based on his skin color, no matter where he grows up, he's gonna have these certain traits. And a lot of that is seen when we talk about these evil cultures and shit and like fantasy
Can I reply
games.
to this as well? Yeah, like, I just want to reply whenever you're finished. So.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please. What was your
Okay,
point? I was
yeah.
gonna say, like,
So again, what I'm saying is like, I don't give a fuck what these World of Warcraft races are based on. They could be based off of directly me, and they could be all the stereotypes in the world. Because I really don't give a fuck, because that's just how art is made. If you go through the design process, you take something based in reality and you abstract it, right? And that's how you create new things. And you abstract.
But what
it
about
until
if
it's
someone's hurt by that though? Like,
well,
does that
I'm not
impact
finished.
your-
I'm
Okay.
not finished. Yeah. So if you can let me finish. Right. So the way that art is created is that you take something that's based in reality and you abstract that, right? So you take that, you recreate it in a different environment, in a new environment, and then you try to make it as unrecognizable as the original product as possible, right? So for me, the issue of the World of Warcraft races having some similarities to real life races isn't what's bothersome to me. What is bothersome to me is the idea of inherent difference, right? We talked about this with Zootopia, right? It's not just World of Warcraft. Zootopia, we talk about there's an inherent difference based on your race, right? And that idea in itself is what's more problematic to me than any portrayal of any race in anything, right? If the fact that there's this predator, and because they're predators, they're inherently worse and they're inherently more violent and all of that, right? So that is what's harmful to me. It doesn't matter what this stereotype is that's being appropriated and put in a different environment that's completely new to me. It's specifically the idea that there is an inherent biological, immovable, unchangeable trait inside you based on your race.
So, well, two things real quick, and then we'll get to Katie, because Katie's chomping at the bit here. I just want to do a shout out to Temflix. Temflix recently had a disaster. His house burned down. And so we're going to post a dono link to his spot. So if you have some money extra and you want to give it to him, you can. So Mad Lad's posting the link. Click it. You can follow it. And if you have an extra $5 or something, maybe help him out. He's a good friend of the channel, good friend of the stream. So please, hopefully things go well with that. And second of all, I get the race realism thing, but there is a difference. Like, I would say that, for example, a snake person, that would have actual real racial differences in how they interact and how they go about their life. That would affect how their culture goes, would affect how their um, interactions with each other goes, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't see that
Sure.
and then see they're making an argument for realism in
I
real
don't
life.
think they are. I don't think they are in real life. I
Yeah.
think I agree with you on that. I don't think they are in real life, and I think that's like also a thing where it's like, yeah, I think artists should be able to do things that the way they intended to do them. I think it's just something to be aware of when you're looking at like scientific racism in real life, things like that, right? That's all. Like there's the mirroring of it, but I don't think that anybody should be punished for that. I think that just it makes sense, right? Like if there's a snake person, maybe they can't regulate their temperature as well, and they like warm things. I don't know. I'm just coming up with
Katie?
things.
Yeah,
So.
that's okay. Katie, Professor Meat, Nick, and Pyro, and Mad Lad.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what do we want, or if we're now at the part where we can discuss, okay, so it's problematic in the like World of Warcraft stuff, for example, because it implies inherent differences, and most people see it as like they see it as it maps onto real life, and then it implies that like races in real life have inherent differences. I get that, and I think Stardust kind of answered my answer. Basically, we're not willing to say that the creators are racist. That's fine with me. We're not necessarily saying change the lore of the game. That's fine with me. So the call to action out of all of that is basically be aware and know that even though you see parallels, like in this fantasy world, it's inherent, and that's not how it is in real life. I think that's what I got, which I would guess is the most anyone would be willing to say that they need to do. Maybe Pyro has a different opinion. I'd love to hear that. But also, like, now that we established that World of Warcraft does that, can we like move to anything else? Like, it doesn't have to be anime. We can just talk about the orcs the regular way. If you want to explain to me why Piccolo is black coded, I have questions about that. If you want to explain to me why orcs in D&D games, like Pyro, I have questions about like you talking about the DM and them. I don't understand why you playing the orcs in that scenario. Like, why does that automatically connect to that being an allegory for black people? And then the DM, what they're doing is problematic or like cringy, but I don't know how it maps onto it. Just that's the lore of the orcs, right? In that story. So I guess I'd love to hear you say more about that.
So like I will respond. One of the things that like, cause like I'm not one of the people who like look at orcs and whatnot and be like, oh yes, that's an allegory for black people. I personally have never gotten that connection before. I've heard people explain it to me. It's not something I've gotten. But when I talk about like the scientific racism, so to speak, of like the in-game mechanics and stuff, what I've noticed is that when I go to a DM and be like, yo, I do want to play as an orc character, they'll work around me in the story making, so it's like, okay, cool, orcs aren't evil, it's just the culture. You will, however, have to deal with the stereotypes, because certain villages do live around certain orc tribes that do
Oh, so they try
maraud
to
and
be
they steal.
PC with you. So they're
Yeah,
actually okay.
they like they try and be PC, but like in a way that works, because like when we try and translate, when we do the thing where it's like, oh, this type of racism is in real life, we do erase that problem of like tying it over to like, oh, this is how real life races see real people, because in the game I'm playing with my DM, they are aware of, they and my party at the very least, the people I'm playing with, their characters are aware that, yo, Bugsy the friendly bugbear is just a friend. Now that might not play out with like the non-playable characters that the DM has to role play. Like my first interaction, I got beaten up by an old lady because she thought I was gonna mug her. Cause like that culture lives in an area where like all the orcs and shit are kind of
Yeah, so
dead.
it's like me going to a cooking class and people know that I'm Jewish, and then every time somebody turns on the oven, they say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, Katie." Yeah, I get it. Okay. That's unfortunate. That's not Orc's fault. Like, that's not Fantasy's fault. That's just
Yeah,
the DM's being
I
weird.
know just real quick, because I'll let you respond, Pyro, but then we got Nick and Professor Meat, and yeah. So we'll go for there.
So like another part of this conversation that like it's kind of hard to balance is like Stardust was mentioning earlier that like she said that you said you don't care that like if it looks like you or it's this is like heavily stereotype thing, and Mad Lad was pushing against that. I think this runs into a big problem when when these two things we've discussed on this panel mash together. What happens when you do get like the Planet of the Hats trope where like we do indulge in the stereotypes a little bit of like certain real cultures to try and distance them from real things, but then in the storytelling, whether intentional or not, we do give them that thing where it's just like, oh yeah, you are kind of just inherently evil, aren't you? And then like we don't flip that in the narrative some way where it's like, oh, not really, it's just a cultural thing, because
I
that
guess
does
I would
happen
then
in a lot
ask
of
you,
narratives.
do you
Yeah.
think there's a responsibility of the creator to always subvert the narrative when they choose to just present a narrative that you see as harmful? Or do you think the most we can do as consumers is just like notice that, tell other people about it, and call it out? Or do you think the creators
So
have
this is
like the responsibility about that?
this is where like kind of my disagreement lies when you were suggesting like the solution. I think as content enjoy like content fucking consumers, I have the right, like if I want to be like, hey, I don't like this, I think you should change it. That does not mean the author has to. If it's something that like the author feels is a valiant critique, they can change it. Like one of the examples I was going to give way earlier is like a game series I really like, Gears of War. The first 3 games of that series were amazing. One of the critiques, however, that people had a lot of the game series is that like, oh, it's just really glorifying like the whole buff bro military guns thing. It doesn't do anything to critique that system how we would like in any other type of media. So this next trilogy did exactly that. They took the same setting basically and they put it and they like told the story in a way where it's like, oh, now we're like actually exploring the problems with like this big awesome military government that like in the last 3 games you were fighting dinosaurs with guns and this existential threat to the planet you didn't really have to think about. Now you actually have to think about it a little bit because the world's been saved.
I just
like
want to
that.
shoot things
Go
with
ahead.
guns.
Go ahead.
Okay, Nick,
Yeah.
please.
So yeah, I think we're running into like a weird collision of ideas, kind of like Pyro was saying as well, right? We've got one avenue, we've got Mad Lad's concern, which is that okay, certain problematic things upset certain people. We've decided as a society that upsetting people is not nice, and we don't like it, and so not upsetting people is good. On kind of sorry, not trying to speak for Stardust or anything, but it seems like Stardust has a different angle, which is that art is important, creative expression is important. We value it as a society, and we don't think that we should just super easily decide we can say like, hey, authors, hey, artists, you guys have to stop being creative. We don't like this. Cease and desist right now. And then
Yeah, basically, I think it's impossible for an artist to anticipate all the different ways that something can be misinterpreted, right? I think I think it's just impossible. I think there are going to be times where you write something where it's just, you write a story and then without even realizing it, somehow like some sort of stereotype comes into play or something like that. And that's why I'm very like, about.
Yeah.
But they could at least try, like.
Yeah, but how are you going to determine if they try or not? How are you going to be able to tell if they tried or
It's
not?
pretty clear in
It's
certain.
not.
Well, that's fine.
It's
No,
not.
but it's
Sometimes
actually.
come on, guys, it's my turn.
All right, fine.
I'm
Let Nick
just,
talk.
I'm sorry. I'm just being
Fuck you,
fragile.
Nick.
Very fragile
I'm
right
just being
now,
fragile. Sorry, you guys.
Come
You
on,
can't
man
help
up.
it.
Fragile. It's my turn.
I'm a male. It's in my nature to
You
be
need to
fragile.
pull yourself by your bootstraps, dude.
Okay.
Like
That's
seriously, all the way up.
Imagine
so
being
problematic.
interrupted as a male. Wow.
Giga Chad. Yeah, so I actually 9,000,000% agree with Stardust here that artists can't be held fully responsible for the feelings of individuals experiencing what is essentially microaggressions. I think that there is a line that can be crossed where the artist should have reasonably known that this would be hurtful to people, but I don't think we ought to hold them responsible for all of the myriad of potential microaggressions that can come, right? And so what we do with that, I think, is like the big question, because I think everyone here values art, at least to some degree, like the sanctity of art and not curtailing artists' work. Yeah, I guess I'd like to hear, whenever it comes to Mad Lad's turn, like what his prescription would be to prevent artists from hurting people.
He's after Professor Meat, so we're gonna let Meat in, then we're gonna let Mad Lad in, and then
That's
then
right,
Katie,
let
because
out the
Katie's
meat.
doing
But still
the.
allow
Don't
artists to
hold the meat
make stuff
back.
and be free. That was all I
Oh,
was gonna say. Yeah.
and Yamato, I can't see you, so if you raise your hand, it doesn't work. I can't see your hand raised, so just letting you know. Okay, so Professor Meat, Mad Lad, Katie, and maybe Yamato. I don't know.
Okay, so trying to go over a lot, but so this line of like innate differences. So I guess two main things I'd like to address. The first thing, real quick, Mad Lad, you brought up the metric of like, what if it hurts people? So part of the reason that I brought up it to a certain extent harm, like perceived harm, at least, is in the eye of the beholder. And my point in bringing up what I said earlier about the fact that we could always, to a limited extent, correctly attribute some kind of negative conceptualization of a narrative, leaves open the potentiality for the fact that basically someone is always going to be harmed somewhere in some way by, or feel bad about it, or whatever phrasing you want to put about a narrative, right? So we have to ask ourselves, at what point is this a problem, right? Because if it's not a problem, then, well, it sounds like we don't really care about it. Now, so if we're asking ourselves, at what point is this a problem, or if we're going to phrase it more specifically, maybe at what point is this actively perpetuating a stereotype, as opposed to just being something we can ascribe creatively a stereotype to, one of the distinctions that people are bringing up is this racial thing, this innate differences. I think this is a much more specific and interesting thing to get into, because there actually are parallels for the current world for innate differences being immovable. It's not always divided across, it's not really divided across the category of race, but but there are at least very significant leanings, for example, between being a man or a woman. I'm sure we can all agree that between being a man and
A
woman,
male or a female?
biological male or female, there are at least directional differences, at the very least, that you experience between being in those groups on the average. And on an individual level, there are some parallels for these kinds of things, in the sense that someone might be born with a birth defect, someone might be born bigger than another person. I'm never going to get taller. There are lots of people that are never going to be as tall as me. There are lots of people who will never have hair as beautiful as mine, or a voice as deep and authoritative as mine. But nonetheless, it is worth allowing narratives to flourish in which people can overcome these innate struggles that they face. Now, trying to parse out exactly why it matters that it's particularly ascribed to race might be more interesting, but I still think there's value there, because it doesn't seem to me like we think it's a good thing for people at all to, like, it seems to me being providing space to contradict sort of innate narratives, whether they're about race or anything else, are not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm trying to find a metric to parse that shit out so I can draw the line, you know?
So, like,
oh, sorry.
Nah, I'm fucking going. So, like, just to be clear, like, we're talking about like whether it's like, you know, a clear problem, or whether like with intent, or maybe a lack of like
I don't think intent really even necessarily
hold
matters.
on, I'm just gonna
Sorry,
intent does matter, absolutely.
Okay.
But not just past the intent, where like it's also how much work did the artist put into being following through, right? So like we have a situation where we have to give charity to the artist until it becomes like questionable, right? So in the World of Warcraft example, there's a lot of questions, and there's a history at Activision Blizzard of having problems with not just some racist stuff, but some sexism, like blatant sexism, like someone actually committed suicide because of sexism, all right? So when we're giving charity to the organization that created the art, we have to kind of pause and like kind of critique what's going on. Now, I'm not saying every microaggression needs to be challenged. Like if one person has a traumatic experience and no one else has a traumatic experience that causes an art to be offensive, then obviously we can't censor the art for that one individual. I get that. In fact, I would say that it's much larger than one person. We could try to figure out where that line is, et cetera, et cetera. But like, honestly, you can tell if an artist put in the work. And the artist I'm going to use for this example is Brandon Sanderson, who has written like, I don't know, 400 hours worth of audiobooks covering culture clash directly, covering institutional racism, covering things that like systemic problems in a society. And he creates a variety of cultures and groups and people who are segregated by their ethnicities. And he does it in a way that is not inherently offensive. Right? So like I've got this golden example of an artist who put in the fucking legwork, and like not only is he addressing like cultural differences, he's even covering like mental health issues.
Hey, but
and he does it in a way that's not. Are you cutting me off? You're the moderator.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yes, I'm cutting you off because I want to add clarity here. He has a team. He has a big enough.
Yeah, I
name
was gonna
where
get
he
to
has
that. All right.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna get to
God.
that. Whatever.
And you
Like,
just let the point
because
go. Like, go ahead,
because
man. I love it.
because like Activision Blizzard doesn't have a fucking team. Fuck off. Like, no. Literally, all these.
two artists are
I'm
the only
sorry.
two
I mean,
artists.
they
I'm
have
so
a
sorry.
team.
Pause. Sorry. So my point is that like literally it's possible to do it right. And when there's a group that's not doing it right, and Activision Blizzard is a group, then yes, we should look at it under a microscope. The fact that goblins are gold hoarding and are constantly trying to undermine you, and that like there's like anti-Semitic allegories like throughout the goblin race. The fact that that exists is a problem. The fact that when Pandaria was launched and all the panda people had Chinese accents and all their buildings had like East Asian flair, etc., that's a bit of a problem. Now, it didn't stop me
Why?
from playing the game. We'll get there.
What's
It didn't
wrong
stop me.
with Chinese culture?
Okay,
Let him finish.
We'll get there. It didn't stop me from playing the game, right? Like I kept playing, I accepted the cultural and ethnic stereotypes as I played the game, and I was like, all right, this is kind of weird, but like I'm gonna do it. But like if someone is playing that game and they are of that ethnicity and they see these stereotypes being discussed about them, that is hurtful. That is harmful for some people of that ethnicity. It's not universal. There's some people that have been on this panel who are of an ethnicity and it doesn't bother them whatsoever. And that's fan-fucking-tastic. I am so happy for those of us who are minorities who can just, pretend that there isn't racism in the culture, and that's fine. But I am very, very aware of the stereotypes. And like, I'm going to be, I'm not going to say that I'm going to ignore all the I'm not going to say that I won't ignore a lot of the systemic and cultural writing issues that we have. But how do I put it?
Mad Latin.
No, my thought. I need my thought. Damn it. Okay, fine. Go ahead. I'll get my thought in a second.
No.
I'm gonna go Yamato, then Katie, then
I was just gonna add to your
Pyro.
point. Like the way how you feel about like certain character in fantasy is how I feel about the Dave Chappelle sketch, right? With the racist pixies, where they were showing all types of like racial stereotypes, and he does it to like different people of different races, and it's an uncomfortable feeling that you get when you see that happen and take place. So like when you talk about this, I kind of feel that, right? Like I kind of feel what you're talking about because I've seen it. Like when he's acting like Tyrone Biggums and stuff like that, like a cracked out black guy, I kind of like feel it because that's like kind of a stereotype that does exist or that people think of when they think of like black people sometimes. So yeah, I kind of understand where you come from with that.
And that drugged out individual, like the Tyrone Bigham sketch, or even in World of Warcraft, they had that too. The Nightfallen were like, magic addicts. So they're all like, very, very skinny. You can see their ribs, and they're like, constantly jonesing for magic, right? Like, these stereotypes will hurt people who are recovering drug addicts. Not everyone. There's some who can like take it in good, laugh about it. I had a friend who was able to laugh about it when they're like, "Oh man, this is like me, like X number of years ago." But for others, it made them not even want to play the game, right? And like people have the right to just not play the game, but they also have the right to be SJWs and say, hey, this isn't okay. This actually hurt me. Can you do something about this? And that's like my point, is that like we're trying to censor folks and their opinions because they want to censor the artist, so it's like the exact same mechanic almost in a sense, right? And like, why the fuck is that okay? Like, if we really believe in like this marketplace of ideas, then let the artists do their thing and let the cancel culture do their thing, and let's see how things shake out.
Okay, so we're gonna go to Katie, and then Pyro, then Nick, then me. Sound good? Good.
You can go before me, Wick.
Oh damn! Because I was gonna give you my turn again. Because I know you. I know you're gonna say something shitty, and my response is going to be to that anyway. So I want you to let you say it first.
That's based. If Wick's okay with that, I'll let you like
call
tail
outs
my
are
bullshit.
common. The call outs are common. Okay.
We should be like, yeah, I agree. We should be like crossing people's based on their opinions a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm willing to.
My thing. It's fine.
Okay. Wick's okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
go,
cool.
Someone, please.
Okay. So, I'm so confused with this because I fucking love multiple angles and then hate multiple angles. Because I agree with you. Brandon Sanderson is like the gold standard of someone who's doing like really responsible iconography in fantasy. I love Brandon Sanderson. The only person I maybe like more than Brandon Sanderson is like Patrick Rothfuss, and he's kind of similar, very sensitive to these things. And I think that's like best practice. The thing is, though, is I agree with you that there's lots of people trying to essentially cancel the cancel culture people. And I think that's bad. Like the whole cancel culture thing. I don't think it's cool. Because I want people to be able to express their feelings about these problems, which is kind of what Katie said, is that we should let people like call things problematic if they're hurt by them. The only problem that I find is then when these people who find things problematic, or even sometimes people who don't find things problematic but are speaking on behalf of other people that find things problematic, and then they all conglomerate and try to do, what's that thing you called, Wick? Secondary
Secondary
sanctions. Who
It's an
mobilize
economic term.
Yeah, so those people who mobilize together to try to leverage power to do secondary sanctions. I don't think that's cool, because that's where I think the silencing comes in. And I think it's a problem if people like me, who are less SJWE, try to tell those people that they can't share their feelings, and that when they complain that they're cringe and dumb and bad. I think that sucks. I think people should be able to complain, but I don't think we should just be able to weaponize our complaints, and I don't think we should be able to weaponize our complaints about people complaining either. I just think everyone should get to complain. All right,
I'm
go ahead.
kind of
Katie,
confused.
talk shit on me.
Wait, I just
Okay.
need one follow up for Nick, just real quick. What is an instance of like this cancel culture thing impacting an artist to the point where like there's an actual problem?
I
Yeah,
got
like
an
I got
example.
this, Matt. Got
Yeah,
it.
Okay,
okay.
all right.
Who else
Katie, go ahead. Sorry.
can
So
go with
sorry.
that? Yeah, I don't need to
Okay.
speak anymore. Go.
Yeah, so I got a very clear example. If you've ever been on young adult Twitter, young adult literature, there's a clear case where this happened twice. And this is just off the top of my head. I'm sure it happens more that I can't just speak out. There was a book called The Black Witch that was a young adult novel about a young magic user who grew up in a very racist kind of society, but they're racist to the Fae. They were like, I don't have a problem with the Faes, but, I don't want them, corrupting my daughters and things like that. And they did a horrible stuff. So she was raised in this culture. So at the beginning of the book, she has these problematic views. But the whole point of the story is she goes through, she sees that these views are wrong. She sees these views are problematic and bad. And so she switches sides and tries to bring down the society and the culture. She works for the oppressed at the end. Young adult Twitter canceled her for it. They canceled her for it. They tried their damn best. There was another thing where the book didn't even get published. I'm not sure if it has been published since, but this was a few years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but the book was a kind of a Anastasia story about dealing with Asian slavery. It was written by someone who was Asian, and they wrote a story about a slave who has magical powers and fights against the evil empire and things like that. And I forget the details, but it was like young adult Twitter prevented her from being published. She had to write an apology. She had to say, "Oh, well, I'm sorry. I was problematic, and I have to go back to the drawing board here." I'm not sure if it ever got published or ever rewritten or anything like that. So this happens again and again, and that's just in one section, one narrow cosmic section. Nick, and then Katie, and then anyone else.
Okay, sorry, I just want to jump in with a tiny little bit. I'm sorry, Katie. I'm so sorry. I was going to say that that in a lot of these spaces, it happens to be the people getting canceled are often female people of color, which is really fucking weird. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Katie?
Yeah, so it's kind of annoying that you said this stuff like before I got to go, but it's fine. So what I was going to say is there seems to be great anxiety about the artists and censoring the artists and hurting the artists, and yeah. And I get that when we're talking about individual people, about private people who are just trying to publish a novel, okay? So I'll address that, Wick. But when people ask Blizzard or Disney or J.K. Rowling to be less problematic, I think it's fine. Like, they're good. It seems like there's so when Madland said that there seems to be people wanting to cancel the canceling people, it's kind of like this thing where now everyone is hyper vigilant. On the liberal and right hand side, they're like, everything is canceling to them. So now if you express criticism, you're trying to cancel. That's how that works. What I wanted to address like earlier, and the panel kind of glossed over it, I don't see what's wrong with doing secondary. I don't see what's wrong with implementing your power as a consumer to influence someone's product. That sounds like a pretty basic like demand of the market kind of bullshit. I mean, if you don't like it because capitalism, sure, but then it's a drop or like a bigger conversation. And I don't mind people, millions of people who read a story and found it offensive using their power as consumers together. I don't think that's a fucking problem. It doesn't seem reasonable. It's like, it's really weird to get really upset about the feelings of the author and how it's hurting them that people think that they're racist. Now, that's different when we're talking about individuals. So if somebody wrote a novel and they're trying to publish it and they're using Reddit and Reddit cancels them because they think their story is racist, that's sad. I guess that's unfortunate for them. But when I send my story to a publishing company and they say no because they don't think it's marketable, I don't get to get published either. So is the publishing company now canceling me? No, you'll say the publishing company is allowed to do that because they have valid reasons to deny me, and the Reddit people didn't. And I don't see who the fuck are you to decide that. And maybe people weren't charitable. Maybe they thought she was racist when she wasn't. I think people are way too concerned with intent. I don't really care about intent. I just think you're allowed to interact with a piece of art and decide that you don't like the messaging of it. I think like condemning the person making it personally without really strong evidence that they were actually trying to be offensive is not great. And people like doing that, and that's okay. But wait, it's really weird, like the obsession that you and people like you seem to have with like this overall badness that cancel culture and SJWs seem to have. Like it's really
Why
weird
is it
that
weird to be anti-censorship?
it's weird because it feels like you care more about civility politics than actually addressing anything
It's
that
not
matters.
civility, no, because this does matter, and I want to address this point before we let others in, since it was a question directed to me. So it matters because art is important, and the ability to tell a story, and the ability to not to be able to subvert narratives or even to explore problematic ideas in a storytelling way, whether that be through the medium of games, videos, movies, literature, has value. When we stop allowing that, when a portion of our society gets to basically use their power to enforce their standards of morality on the rest, on the art world specifically, it causes problem.
But your
have
example
you-
didn't have that
Wait,
happen, though, right?
wait.
Yeah, I gave you 2 examples. You addressed one.
If you
And
came
yes,
to
they
Reddit
definitely
and
tried,
talked
but
about
this was-
publishing a novel,
Mm.
and that didn't happen because people had a bad reaction, that's not what censorship is.
That
can
is a form of
publish-
censorship. Most
It is
definitely.
not.
Mhm.
Because you wouldn't say that I'm being
like
censored
that.
because the publishing company isn't publishing me. That's not how getting published works.
So-
Censorship is when you release something and then someone takes it away. Capitalism denies us from
You
doing
don't
things
think
we
that
want all the
censorship
time.
is preventing people from releasing information? Because I guarantee you it is.
Are we talking about information now? I'm
Censorship.
sorry,
So
what?
Very
well,
semantic.
yeah, I mean, this is a semantics thing.
It's
I
not.
think preventing using force, using economic force, using secondary sanctions to prevent something you do not like from being published has a negative effect on society when it comes to art specifically. And I
What was it?
Yes,
consider
but the
games
only
art,
reason
I
you think
consider
that,
literature
the
art.
only reason you think that, and why you see a distinction between that and the sweatshop argument, is that you don't think the reasons that they claim why they're canceling
It's not
this
just-
person are valid. That
No,
is
I
the
do not
only
think they're
difference
valid.
that
I
you're
do not think they
drawing.
reach the level where it's doing actual harm that outweighs the benefit.
Yeah.
Hey, can I
So
try and
it's
build
your
the bridge?
subjective opinion.
Wait. Can I
It's
can I
not
try
a-
and build
okay.
the wait? Can I try and build the bridge here?
Let's get meat in,
Don't
then
build
pyro.
the fucking
please.
bridge.
Meat and then
Build-
shit
Wait,
pyro.
wait,
Burn
wait,
it.
wait, wait.
Oh, Stardust,
I
Stardust,
want to say, punishing pre-crime is great, guys. Super base.
It's not even punishing pre-crime
That's
though.
not
Yes,
it
it is.
No,
It
no,
is.
wait,
It's
no.
Such a
it's
weird
Pretty
straw.
crime.
We're
No.
literally
Yeah,
talking
no.
about,
No.
because we're talking about established pieces of
No, if we're
media
gonna
that
show-
have come out and
Come on,
then
man,
they're
it's Meat's
decided it's
turn.
problematic.
Bro, like, go ahead, meet.
No, it's
Thank you.
We gotta
thank you.
stop the
no,
crime
no, no, no,
before
no.
it
It's okay.
happens.
That,
There's a
Oh,
line
okay.
of there's a line of
So-
command. We've been having to raise hands. Like, go ahead, meet.
okay, so because I was waiting for so long, I not many of my points I've written down here on my thought chart are necessarily 1-to-1, but you guys can engage with them if you want. First off, I guarantee you that I could read Brandon Sanderson and find a whole bunch of stuff that I find offensive and problematic about the narrative, for whatever it's worth. I think that if a culture in a video game is just showing pandas and Chinese architecture and Chinese accents, and those are all together, I don't see any. What is wrong about that? Pandas are in China. There's nothing wrong with Chinese architecture, with Chinese accents, or pandas. Maybe there's something else there that someone hasn't told me about, but
Do I
that's
need
not a
to do
convincing
the
argument.
accent for you, Professor Meat? Do I need to do it? So
No,
everyone
we don't
can
need to do the
reply?
accent.
Because
No,
we
we
don't
you are
need
not
to
the
do the
arbiter on
accent.
the accent of
Do the
Chinese.
accent.
I'm
Please
not
do.
the
Go ahead and do
arbiter.
it.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
let's
the
do it.
arbiter of
and
accents.
Stardust, you're not
No,
a character.
Edge, I
Hey,
are the
hey,
arbiter of
time out,
accents.
time out,
Please
time
do
out,
it.
time out.
No. It's
Oh
not like
my
I'm the
God.
arbiter.
Pyro,
It's not
let
like no.
Pyro,
He gave me permission.
accent real quick.
Yeah,
Then Pyro
I'll-
Meat
no.
has to finish.
Accents
I
right
got
now.
you. I got
Real
you.
quick.
It's not that I'm the arbiter of accents. It's that when I watch the trailer and then the pandas come out and they're like, "Oh, hello, I'm the panda of the show." Like that's kind of
That's
fucking
the accent?
yikes.
accent.
That doesn't sound like the
That's a
accent.
Hold
Yeah,
on, wait a
accent.
minute. I'm gonna have to look at.
Let's play them side by
Somebody
side.
do the accent, please, so I can know how racist it is.
Okay, so the
Nick, you're a racist.
Wait, time out, Nick, hold on. My point is, and I'm backing up because I was being very hyperbolic, which is why I said I'm not the arbiter of accents. But when you see things like that and people see it as something as hyperbolic as that, especially a lot of Asian people who saw that, who did have outcry about that, then we do need to have this conversation. Because you guys might be like, oh, Pyro, that's just really silly and outlandish. But some people see this and they're like, yo, this negative stereotype that we don't see as bad is very bad. The stereotypical voice that they're putting on, it's kind of fucking shit, bro.
And not all
Hey.
East Asian cultures are Chinese, by the way. Just saying.
understand.
Exactly.
Okay, so Meat, are you done? Because Nick wants to help you. So
I got
No,
just
he
one
had a-
one
Not gonna
tidbit.
get the. Are we not
No,
gonna
I'm
get
done.
the accent?
I don't think we are. We were
missed
promised
it.
it. I'm
Wait,
very
wait,
angry
you-
at you.
No, he did it. He did
You
it.
did it.
missed
It's
it.
like-
You missed it, son.
It was a shitty
Yeah,
accent.
You
if
gotta
that
do
was
it. You
it.
gotta redo.
I think we should just
Spot
move on,
redo.
accepting that as a
What
credible
is
source
that?
of what
What
the
is
accent
the-
is like. I think we should.
You didn't understand the
No, wait,
explanation. I'm
We need
sorry.
to do
Nope,
a redo.
that's true. I didn't.
For Stardust, let's do a
Stop
redo.
bullying one of our two black guys. Stop it. You're hurting him. Stop it.
I have a 50%
You
non-bullying
racist
rate. I think that's pretty
bastard.
fair.
No, I understand. It's not
Woman in
racist.
the dark men. That's fine. Don't want to
I
give her
will
any
white knight for
information.
you, Pyro.
Damn.
I
You
wanted
need
to-
me.
No, I don't need you. I understand.
Okay, okay, hey,
No,
hey, gang,
I am your savior. You
Hey,
need
gang,
My
hey,
me.
calm
white
down.
savior.
My white
So,
savior.
Nick.
This
Nick.
is a really short input. So with the voice acting in Mists of Pandaria, I know Chen Stormstout is one of the big ones that people kind of complain about, but the voice actor is an Asian American voice actor, and so I don't know
That makes it
how.
better. True.
What?
That makes it way better when you have the Asian American doing it. That way they can like do it to themselves, right? You know.
No. So
Of
I guess
course.
more.
Should
I
I
guess
go
more.
outside?
There are black conservatives.
Hey,
Well
let-
then.
Should I
Let
go
Nick-
outside and do blackface too? That'll make it
Let
more
Nick
better,
finish.
guess.
I don't think a black. And let Nick finish, please.
So I don't think we would be levying this criticism of most accents that like you're not allowed to do an accent of a certain ethnic group or language or whatever if it wasn't Asian. Like we have people doing like the Jamaican accent for the trolls and other. Anyway, we won't get into these ones, but like places have accents. You know,
Oh.
and it's not racist to have accents in the media, unless I guess the accent is like really derogatory. But I guess I have a hard time seeing how it's derogatory if we have an accent from this Chen Storm style.
It would be nice
That's-
if humans were the ones with the accents and everybody else could sound like they spoke regular
Why
English,
do
right?
pandas have
Don't
accents?
humans have
Only
accents though
humans.
in the
Got it.
game?
Yeah,
the
they just
fancier
literally
ones
do.
get to be British a little bit.
No, there's also Russians. Like
So
I don't know,
animalistic
this
races
is-
have no accents. What does that
yeah,
mean?
so,
what
so
what
this
is that?
is
What's
this
the
point.
implication there?
I'm gonna push back a little more. This point is actually just moronic. Like if you
Yeah,
have a
that's what I'm
problem,
saying.
yeah, if you have a problem with
Oh.
different accents being used because you think they sound goofy, that's your own prejudice. Like
Boo.
No, it's not. I'm not saying because it sounds goofy. I'm
Go
saying like
for
the
it.
main human-centered, like the people who we can most relate to in these games are typically the ones without the accents, right? And then every other race or species or whatever else, for the most part, has some sort of ethnic accent.
well, so
That's
the
all I'm
orcs,
saying.
the orcs who are from a different planet just talk
Right.
like normal, like American English.
So
Normal.
like,
I mean,
I can kind
it's
of
a fancy world. We
understand.
could
Like,
put
Okay.
I've been
whatever we
raising
want,
my
right?
hand for a little bit. Like, I can kind of
Pyro,
understand.
you've been
where-
interjecting for a little bit too, so I mean,
I
go ahead.
interjected. No, I interjected once. Don't play it up. Like,
If only I could have
no.
predicted this.
Shut up. Like, I understand where Mad Lad's coming from because, like, there are examples like where we're talking about like animals having like human accents and whatnot, and then like I've read series and shit by creators like Brian Sanderson, Taylor Anderson, and whatnot, where they have written animalistic characters from certain parts of our very real world, like Asia, India, and whatnot, and they made the distinct choice that instead of giving these fantastical creatures human accents, they're going to play it closer to biology and how these animals have like how the animals they're basing them off of rather have like their vocal cords. So like when they make lizard characters from like Asia, they don't make them sound like Asian Chinese warlords, even though that's what the culture is heavily based off of. They make them talk with like kind of a lisp because lizards can't form certain words with their mouth. They make like the accent is just isn't human because the creatures based off them aren't human. And I think that's where Mad Lad's coming from. Like, if we're going to be basing some of these fantasy creatures off of animals like pandas and shit, why do they have to have the stereotypical human accent? Especially
Well,
if they're not
all
from a
accents are
place like
human.
China.
What's a non-human
no,
accent?
I
What does that
literally,
mean?
I literally just.
We're talking
told
about
you.
the vocal
And-
cords,
No,
like,
I literally
the
just told you,
design.
Professor Meat. Like, I'll
but
explain it
he's-
again.
wait,
no,
wait,
time out, time out. Wait,
No, there
Yamato.
shouldn't be any vocal differences
no,
in the vocal qualities between
I will
fantasy
explain.
races.
I'll
Like, what-
explain it to you
Please,
again,
okay.
Professor Meat, because you weren't listening.
Thank you.
I said like
Appreciate
when
it.
you have like certain type of fantasy creatures that are based off of animals, like lizards or something. You can base their speech not around how they sound based on what ethnic region they come from, but how they're shaped biologically. Lizards, for example, can't form certain words. They can't like put their lips together to form like M's and shit. So when they talk, they're going to be something like this because that's the
Okay.
way they're
And then no one would understand anything. It's
Okay,
gonna be really
but
stupid.
what you need to
Yeah.
realize is that even if someone speaks with a speech impediment due to some physical quality, they still have some measure of accent that is a human accent. You're not taking out the human accent. You're just adding
Can
other
I
stuff.
say
that
Okay, you
does the
can't
more
call it
quality.
a human accent.
Wait,
And
wait,
It
pause,
is derived
pause,
from human
pause,
accents.
pause,
What does that mean?
pause. Meat,
not.
finish your point. Then we're going to Katie. Then who else
No,
wants
I'm
it? Raise
good.
your hand right now so I can get the order. Okay, so that's it. Oh, Nick. Okay, so Professor Meat, Katie,
Wait,
Nick.
Professor Meat, you had you wrote down a whole bunch of stuff on your paper. You didn't even finish listing them off. You should go again.
Bro,
Yeah, you said,
I
like,
have
five things.
Well,
I
Meat
only
is
get
going
about
now.
20% of my papers out. I've got this, so all of the fucking notes that I have, for
Concise.
things and arguments I want to
Concise,
make.
Meat. Be concise.
This is all of them.
Be
It's all
concise,
trash.
and
There
Katie.
You
is
can
no
skip
such
it.
thing. If you, all right, I'll just say this one statement. If you think, I'm sorry, I love you, Mad Lad, but if you think, and everyone else, but if you think that there is any such thing as any kind of speech that is intelligible by us and identifiable as speech in the way that we think about it, that is not inherently derived from human accents, categorically, then you simply need to like talk to a linguist or something. You're wrong.
See. No,
We're talking
actually.
about
Okay.
fantasy. We're talking about fantasy.
Yes, and all
Okay.
fantasy is derived from human experience. All literature is derived from human
Which is
experience.
why
All
the
movies are
lizards,
derived from human
which is
experience.
why the lizards can pronounce the M, yeah, because it's fantasy, and we don't need to
Exactly.
base it on the vocal cords.
No, No,
Exactly.
no, hold up. You can dance around like fucking idiots, but that's what Mad Lad and me are trying to explain.
I like
when
dancing
you
around
try
like a
when
fucking
you
idiot.
try and make
shame
these
me,
things
don't believe me.
semi-realistic with like giving animal speech, you don't necessarily have to go full course. You can look at certain things like biology. If I have an upright lizard person with a fucking snout, yeah, certain words are gonna be a trouble. Or you could do the typical thing and just give them snake speak, because that's what a
The
lot of people
snake
do.
accent was much better. Nick, Katie,
Fine, Katie
and
first.
Mad
Katie
Lad.
first. Katie first.
What?
Katie
Okay,
first.
Katie, Nick.
What?
Okay, Katie, Nick, Mad Lad. Good.
Okay.
Oh, and are you raising your hand, Stardust? I can't tell. You're just
Oh no, I'm sorry.
okay. That was fine.
Me. I like your bun, but I think you are the most
Thank you.
triggered snowflake I've ever met online. Like
That's a very
because
triggered sounding thing to say.
thank you. We're both triggered, okay? You do
I'm just
trigger
having
me.
fun.
It's very annoying to me because I think
Mhm.
you're intelligent. So I don't think you're
Thank you.
actually stupid enough to make the points that you're making. And I don't think you're like
feel similar about
disingenuous
you.
either. I think you have a certain ideology that you're fighting against, and it's making you completely incapable of like engaging with anything that's said like in
Ditto.
good faith. Which I think you're capable
Let her
of. So it's
finish
just
me. Let her
disappointing.
finish without interrupting. So,
Sorry.
Katie, please, and then
So usually when I was preparing for this panel and I did not understand why orcs in fantasy are what's racially stereotypical about them, what's the issue? I wanted to come here and listen to Yamato and Pyro, and I wanted to hear perspectives from people who might find those stereotypes offensive. Same with Piccolo, right? I don't need to explain to you why the panda thing in World of Warcraft and why it doesn't matter. Sometimes snowflakes get confused and they try to explain to you things when they don't really understand why. And that's fine. We do that all the time, right? The fact of the matter is a lot of Asian people found that offensive. Sometimes Black people find certain depictions of Black or Black-coded characters offensive. Sometimes gay people find that offensive. I find a lot of things offensive in like because it feels anti-Semitic and nobody else gets it. And the reason why nobody else gets it is because the more privileged you are, there are certain ignorance that comes with it. So it's just better to like branch out and ask other people's perspectives. Now, you don't have to accept them as truth. You don't have to take them as your own. Like, I still haven't heard a convincing argument to why any orcs in fantasy outside of World of Warcraft are a reasonable enough depiction of like stereotypical like racial depiction of Black people. And I will still think it's weird and would tell people, if you're a Black person and it hurts you that like there's the equivocation made there, maybe don't choose orc. I don't know, but it sounds like the connection there is not legitimate, as I've heard. I do know that a lot of Asian people can explain to me why the panda bullshit is racist, and maybe why they shouldn't have done that, you know? So I think people can complain, and there were a lot of people. When there are a lot of people offended by something, you can assume that it's not one person being triggered over something silly. Okay, the millions of people who are upset with like depictions in J.K. Rowling's book about the trans person or like the murderer bullshit, that's a legitimate complaint. We don't have to dismiss complaints. And this is again like addressing you, Wick, as well. Just because you don't find a complaint valid doesn't make it wrong. It just means that you don't have to accept it as your own.
But I get to
it doesn't
decide what I think
invalidate.
about it, right? I get to decide. No one else gets to tell me if I think that
I've
opinion.
got to
is
No,
respond
you
to
can
Casey.
think
That whole
whatever
first
you
half of that
want,
monologue was
and I will
literally
express
about
my
me.
opinion when I wish.
you can think whatever you want, but that's so you can exercise your power just as much as anyone else is
I
able
would
to
never.
exercise
The
their power.
difference is
Are we
I'm not
looking
trying
Panda
to
Express now?
deplatform them. But go on.
Hey, wait, can I? Since the first half was about me, can I respond to it before you respond to our second half?
I want to hear what Stardust said. Stardust said something, but it was probably clever, and I didn't hear.
I can be
it.
real
no,
quick.
No, I was just gonna say that Panda Express. Like, are we just gonna get rid of it then?
I mean,
Sounds
the
like
food
it.
quality is pretty poor, so
No.
maybe.
Also, all
Wow,
fables.
what the fuck?
No,
You don't
no.
like? I don't like Panda Express, but
Hey, I can be
No.
real
Where will I
quick.
get my
Wick.
food
I'll pass it
from?
right back to you. I promise I can be quick.
Jesus.
I wanna
Where
hear
I
what
get my
Professor
food
You
Meat
from?
directly addressed me.
Hey,
You
me,
directly
me,
Yeah,
addressed
yeah,
me.
like,
Me.
like,
Like,
just
get rid
let's
of.
go meet.
Real
Should we
quick,
get rid of?
Real
Should we
quick,
get rid of
Trey.
Hey, hold on,
McDonald's?
I'll be real quick. I'll be real quick.
Damn
So
it!
first off,
I got a joke
capitalism
and
is
you
based.
ruined it.
First off, if people want to use capitalism to their advantage because they're upset about things, I think that's pretty fucking cool. Free market. Let's go.
You finished arguing
Calling someone
about that.
bad
The
faith.
whole.
Hold on, no. Calling someone
Literally
bad.
arguing against that.
Blue, thank you,
Call us-
buddy. Thank you.
You
for
might
the
have misunderstood me.
subscriptions.
So
Blue,
anyway,
you're the best.
calling someone bad faith. It's funny because that seems to me on the platform to be categorically understood to be like the most bad faith thing you can say on a panel is calling someone bad faith or saying they're effectively doing bad faith. You started your argument with saying, I don't need to explain to you, which I think is pretty telling for the integrity of your argument. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to go about these roundabout ways to explicitly give reasons why you don't need to give your argument. And you also said the reason no one else gets it is because they're not as basically enlightened or educated or whatever as you. It might actually be because you're just having an emotional response and it's your own idiosyncratic thing and it's kind of cringy. Maybe. I don't know if that's the case, but that possibility is equally as valid.
Can we
I would
stop
say.
sniping
very
at each other?
ironic
Hey,
Wait,
man.
just real quick.
I agree.
time
We
out.
should stop making direct comments at each other like
Pete,
this.
Can we stop sniping at each other on personal? Attack the opinion.
Hey,
not
they
the
shot
person.
first.
Just
No,
They shot
literally
first. Oh my God,
last
it doesn't
night you
matter.
were making the same arguments about how awesome you are on the same channel.
Okay, enough.
I am pretty
Enough.
awesome. I agree.
Enough. Just try to tone it down.
I
That's
just
all
want to
have say.
talk about fantasy orcs, you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Can I
just
comment?
yes, Katie, please respond.
Okay, first of all, I apologize. I thought you will find my comments playful. If I hurt your feelings, that's not
Fine.
not my intention.
You know my feelings.
I think you are intelligent, and I think you and I can have a lot of things to talk about. So I did not mean to make it hostile, and I apologize that it came off that way. I also
That's not-
don't think that you're bad faith. I'm just frustrated because I feel like you and I have all the resources that we need to like understand each other's points. So, and then whenever I hear you talk, it feels like you think I represent some certain agenda and you seem to want to push against that agenda without fully listening to me. And I guess that kind of upsets me because I don't feel fully heard. But that doesn't mean that I get to like shit on you. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. No,
in
I'm not
terms
trying to
of-
shit on you either, just to be clear. I'm sorry.
Well, let her
I don't
finish.
think you were.
Let her finish.
In terms of what you said, I don't think saying I don't need to explain to you. I can't explain to you why the pandas thing is upsetting. It's not upsetting to me. It's just not my plight. But if there are Asian people who are upset by that, I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong just because I don't understand it. Same way that I don't understand why some Black people have an issue with orc depiction in fantasy. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm just going to say, okay, I heard your argument. I think that's I'm on board. That sounds pretty shitty, or that doesn't sound pretty shitty. And then I would want to either help or not help, depending on how valid I think the comment is. And also a point that I want to make earlier that I kind of forgot is that when we are worried about authors and when we're worried about like finding the intent of people and stuff like that, and when we're saying, well, what's the harm in having like people having accents and them being pandas and it being like Asian presenting like housing? The problem is that like if this is a big enough media platform like World of Warcraft, like J.K. Rowling, like Disney, for example, they have a lot of power. And the people who are offended by those depictions, people who might find those stereotypes harmful to them in that moment, that's just another instance in their life when they're enforced something very negative on themselves, when they're just trying to enjoy a piece of media. Now, I'm not saying that creators are obligated to try to always manage someone's feelings. I'm saying that I understand how someone might find something offensive because of their lives, like experiences, and I can think that valid without fully understanding why that's upsetting to them. And I think someone who can't do that should practice empathy more. I don't know, it just seems like a very reasonable thing to do. Men don't understand every complaint that I have about men, but men I enjoy being with are men who are not constantly busy explaining to me why I'm wrong when I'm frustrated with men about something, you know?
So-
And I think that's okay.
So I think that yes, I think I agree with you 100%. We should have empathy. If someone isn't comfortable with content, then they should definitely not engage in it. No, we hear this all the time. Like, so people will say like, "Oh, fantasy is for everyone. This game's for everyone. Gaming's for everyone." And I disagree. I think it's for anyone, there's a difference. It's not for everyone. Not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to engage with the story. Not everyone's going to think the story's fun. Not everyone's going to think the games are fun. It's not for everyone, nor should it be. but it should be for anyone. Anyone should be allowed to engage with the content if they so choose. And that's what we have, free will, gang. We all have the ability to choose, to decide for ourselves which things we can engage with and want to engage with and enjoy, and which ones we just don't. And what bothers me is when we try to enforce what we want on society as a whole. That's my only issue with this. But please, who was next? I was
was me.
ranting. Okay, so Nick, please go.
So I guess my issue is I don't know where this whole thing stops, right? Because I've been around in like fantasy circles for a long time, and there used to be a big problem that people had where, okay, we would have characters depicted with accents from different regions, and people were like, ooh, I don't think this is a really good depiction of this accent. And so the criticism, like this is back in the kind of earlier 2000s, was people, so like say an Asian accent, right? So Asian people would be like, this is a really weak depiction of an Asian accent. And then they would look at the voice actor and be some fucking white dude from New York. And it was like, why the fuck is a white dude from New York trying to do an Asian accent and doing a really shitty job? And so then the criticism was like, why don't we try and bring like Asian voice actors and give them some voice actors so they can have some representation in this, and hopefully do a better job at replicating Asian accents, or the same thing for any accent, a Nigerian accent, a Ugandan accent, a French accent, all of these things. Get people able to do the voices, and hopefully people who represent these places where these accents come from. I think that was a sense change. I think that was a good change. And it seems like World of Warcraft did that for Mists of Pandaria, unless there's other voice actors that were white that do a really like silly caricaturish example of an Asian accent. But I don't like, if we argue that like essentially I subjectively think this Asian accent is silly and I don't want it in the game, it's like, so do we just get rid of like Asian representation? This is delineated from the pandas, because I don't know what I think about the pandas. I've never heard people talking about the panda thing. But that's fair. Yeah, that's it.
No, they just
can
say
I-
that
can I
it's silly and they don't want it in the game. And
Can I
that's
respond,
that,
actually?
you know?
Wait.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that it's just silly, and which is super
So
fair.
Mad Lad, then Pyro.
So, like, just directly responding to this, if a solution doesn't solve the problem, that doesn't mean don't find a better way of handling the problem. Like, I remember the whole voice actor thing, but it wasn't just voice acting. It was also like things like fucking Tom Cruise playing The Last Samurai, right? Like, there was like a lot of this shit going on, and yeah, the
Scarlett
solution is-
Johansson playing a Japanese woman.
Well,
Oh my
the
God.
last samurai
Okay,
thing
so-
was different from that, but
Well, right. Well, I mean, they-
there's
Oh, no,
It's a white
don't cut me
savior.
off. Fuck off. Let me finish, please. Sorry, not to be rude, but
go
I just want
fuck
to finish.
yourself too, bro.
All right, good. I will. The point is, like, the stories are convenient. Like, the writers will write in reasons for these actors to be playing these roles. Like in Ghost in Shell, Scarlett Johansson's character is like in a European robot, the Japanese mind, European body, whatever. Last Samurai had the same thing. But the point is, regardless, if a solution doesn't solve the problem, that doesn't mean don't try to find a better way of doing it. Like, that really is like the hallmark here. And like, yeah, I like the fact that they tried this idea out. But it turns out that the accents that are being requested by people who are not Asian, the people who are designing the story, are not Asian. They're just putting these things together. The art might not have been made by Asians. We'd have to, like, you know, kind of go through and pick it apart, I guess. At the end of the day, it's their decisions to kind of decide what cultural tropes we're going to use. Now, going back to the whole thing where you guys thought it was silly to talk about, like, you know, the biology of voice. There's like anthrobiology, like there's this classification of anthropology called anthrobiology, right? Where like we've literally reconstructed what a Neanderthal probably sounded like based on their vocal cords, the shape of their chest. I'm actually going to read a chunk of article that covers this. Working from a Neanderthal skeletal remains, a team of scientists created physical and virtual models of our prehistoric relative. They used those to extrapolate measurements and estimates of the Neanderthal's abilities and traits. They also created a model of a Neanderthal throat and showed it along with the skeleton to Rosenberg. She concluded that the shape of the throat combined with the dimensions of the Neanderthal's skull and chest would have produced some very unusual and very, very loud sounds. And the point is, we can kind of sort of surmise what kind of speech could be made based on the size and shape of any sort of creature. Now, I'm not saying every fantasy author has to, like, you know, pull out a fucking ruler and then measure the throat of their what they're trying to depict. My point is that you can create a fantasy realm, you can create like a fantasy character and not rely on just the cultures and experiences that you've had. You can actually kind of realize that those cultures that you've encountered might not be good to portray in this way. You don't want to have the genocidal maniacs having like, you know, German military aesthetic. You could probably do something different, right? That's the point.
So like two things. One, I want to say, Mad Lad, thank you for like restating the point I was making earlier.
That's a good point.
Like thank you. Like I just appreciate it. Like thank you for restating that point earlier, because that's something I was just trying. Like a lot of times we just don't have to focus on the culture. We can focus on other aspects when building these characters. Secondly, Nicotine, I understand like when we talk about cultures and different accents and whatnot. I understand a lot. Like you don't want to run the risk of like accidentally fucking over like the diversity of these fields and whatnot, the actual representation going involved. I think one of my issues is when Asian, like, because Mad Latin hinted at this earlier, where he's like, "Oh, you want them to do it to themselves?" And I think this is something that like happens a lot in movie studios and shit. Like, you will have like Asian American actor or Canadian American actor. They're brought in to play a character that might not be a historical role or some shit like that, where you might need to incorporate the accent. And then they're given like the acting prompts, like, no, I need them to sound a bit more Asian, you know, put on a bit more of an accent, like sound, you know, sound. And then like like there are times where it does run the line of like, oh, you have a Canadian actor who speaks with a Canadian dialect, and then like because they have an Asian descent, you told them to put on this voice, and like, you know, like kind of like Mad Latin said, to avoid that whole negative stereotype of like, oh, it's just a white guy doing the voice. Because I remember that really well, where like there was a lot of pushback about like white people and people of like different races doing cultural voices and whatnot, and how offensive that was.
And to back up your point, by the way, I included a link to African Americans in blackface on the vaudeville stage. It turns out that there's lots of different ways that we could do it to ourselves.
Can I respond really quick to that little bit about the accents
Yes,
and
then
stuff?
Meat, then
Okay.
Katie.
Cool. So when me and Meat brought up we're snidely being like, but it's fantasy. The reason we did that is because that was your words in relation to the fact that you don't have to use culturally different accents, right? Like that was your guys' argument, and so we brought it up because we thought it was silly that you were like,
That
"It-
wasn't
it
actually an
said-"
argument.
That wasn't an argument.
That wasn't my argument. I think you misinterpreted what I was saying. Then.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you have a-
so I understand exactly what you guys are saying.
No,
but
you don't.
Yes, I
Nope.
do. So when me and Meat brought up the fact that it's fantasy, they don't have to do the lizard talk. The reason we said that is because earlier on in the conversation, you guys had said that exact same thing. It's fantasy at the notion of using different accents. So like,
Okay,
it was using your own logic. That's why we brought it up.
Hey,
it's not because we
wait. I understand. I understand.
Time out. Stardust has to go, so I'm gonna let her give her an outro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're reading too much into this. I don't know. In my opinion, I think that we should be able to separate the art. I think it's asking a little too much from a creator when they have to police the most minute things. Even with people who are trying to not be racist or not be bigoted in some sort of like media, they're still going to have something that they didn't anticipate that somebody is interpreting the wrong way. But anyways, that's just my view on it. Obviously, you guys are going to have different views, but yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Stardust. I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/Stardust. It's spelled exactly the way that it sounds, and I've been covering a lot of current war stuff recently. So yeah,
So
that's
Stardust is super great, and also I've been invited on her panel tomorrow to do something a little more lighthearted and a little
Yes.
more fun. The Chaos Cast, one of my favorite segments. Thank you. I'm really glad you came through, Stardust. It's always
Thank
fun
you for
having you.
me.
And
Yeah.
I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
So like the reason I say the reason like Madland says and he can
Wait, wasn't I
maybe
next? I believe
no, like
We're
I
doing a little bit of back and
wait,
forth here.
I was doing
yeah,
after
no,
that.
like can I like actually respond to that though?
I don't know. Usually when
bro,
people
I don't know.
respond, it goes round and round.
It's
but sure, go
a
ahead.
Quickly.
conversation, like
Concise.
Okay, cool.
Concise.
Yeah,
Fire.
no, I'm gonna make it concise. You just gotta let me finish. Yeah, the reason I said like, oh, it's just fantasy, and then you guys started like doing the dance and shit. Like, the reason I said it's fantasy is because naturally in fantasy there are certain things we overlook. We overlook the fact that pandas in real world have not evolved speech and something. So like when we make my point was when we make fantasy creatures based off of animals and shit, there are certain things we can overlook. And the point I was making is that we can overlook the fact that these fantasy creatures may be inspired or like organized in a certain area where certain cultures developed, but like we can look at other things when we develop how they talk in their linguistics and shit like that. And Mad Latin hit that point on the head with his study.
Yeah, and that was the point. I don't know how you guys are missing the joke. That's so confusing to me.
Well, I just wanted to. What was the thing
Wait,
that you said that I said real quick, Nick? I just wanted to get it, and then you can talk to me. I'm sorry. I just want to get clarification on what Nick was saying. I was arguing, so I can clarify after you go.
So you want me to paraphrase? Okay, so you were saying that we can look in the example of the Neanderthals. We can take like looks at the bio something. I don't remember what word you used. The makeup of their throat essentially to get some kind of an idea of how they're what they would have sounded like. Generate an idea of how they would have spoken, and you were ambiguating that to the fact that like if we were to have, as an example, this is what you said, but this is the implication. If we had lizard folk, we could get kind of an idea of what a lizard person would sound like. Yeah, which is true, right? Making biological essential arguments for races in fantasy to talk a certain way, which is cool. Using science to figure out how things would sound, based, super cool.
Cool.
Also,
what was the thing you thought I said before though? Before that.
I don't know if it was you or Pyro.
It was me. It was me. That's why I
Pyro.
clarified it. Like it was my point, not Mad Lines. It was strictly
Okay, cool.
me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, am I supposed to say that point too, or?
No, you're good. Like,
No, we can just pass it to me.
No,
That's
no.
So the point was, it's fantasy. You can do both. That's the point. That was the joke.
Okay.
Pyro, or not pyro, meat.
Right.
Meat.
Real quick thing. All I wanted to say is this one point that I found very interesting because I think it's pretty just factually not the case. So I want to be very clear about it. So there are lots of super cool ways that we can affect speeches in fantasy based on by extrapolating our imagination based on non-human morphology. However, when you say we can do voices and we can make up fantasy voices in a way for these races that doesn't have to rely on like human voices and our experiences with human accents, can you tell me an example of a voice you've heard that didn't have an accent or didn't come from a human?
Well, actually, that
yes.
video that that article I was looking at with the Neanderthal, they actually created.
Do you think that Neanderthals didn't have accents, regional accents or dialects?
Well, they would have had
They,
something.
they
but-
grunted. They were like,
All right, let me clarify. If
Well,
then they
that's actually
didn't
not true.
speak.
It would have been like a lot more.
They were like,
Right. So they either didn't speak or they spoke and they had accent. And if you'd
Well,
like to speak to a linguist about that,
Well, no, I
they
mean,
would confirm that.
No, I mean the point is
So
like
as a former linguist, everyone.
Right,
has
maybe
an
linguist isn't quite the right word. Maybe it would be
accent. As a former
anthropologist.
linguist, everyone
perhaps?
has an accent.
anthropologist,
Let's just-
anthrobiologist.
Yes, okay,
I mean,
thank you.
and that's
Everyone
fine.
has
But
an
like the point is like we're talking about like real ethnic accents, right? Like things that are
Uh-huh.
this like portrayal of like what an Asian culture is. Like when you're talking about the East Asian thing and you're justifying the fact that the pandas are Chinese, everything else looks Chinese, it's all the same. And there's people who are, directly related to Chinese and Japanese and Vietnamese culture looking at this saying, nah, this isn't my culture. They just borrow parts of all these different East Asian cultures and mishmashed it together and pretended that it's like one thing, right? And like the
So
whole
how do you-
point, the reason why it's offensive is that there's a lack of sensitivity in harnessing that culture. It's the same thing as like when, I don't know, a football team, a sports ball team of any kind uses like, a native mascot.
Just
for
say
their team,
Redskins,
right?
bro. The
Yeah,
name
No,
Redskins.
now they're the Commanders.
Well, that's
Well,
different.
yeah.
That was about a slang. That was about the slang of the name. All right.
Yeah,
No one had a problem with like
Well, I mean, no, I mean, like, so, like, my high school, for example, we were the Big Reds, and we had this fucking giant chief,
Okay.
like, as our like mascot, right? Like that. The
Do you think that might be
imagery.
because of the word redskin?
Well, I mean, even without the term Redskin, there's a bunch of different other high school. Well, it wasn't Redskin; it was Big Reds. Very different.
Sure, but do you
The
think that
point
might be
is-
offensive because of the connotation
that-
of the word?
The big
Yeah,
red.
I mean, that was one part of it, but like the other part of
Okay.
it was the use of the iconography. I can't say that word.
Iconography.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you,
So
that
just
word.
time out.
Yeah.
Time out. I'm going to give everyone a 10-minute warning that we're going to start
Mhm.
wrapping these up. I'll give outros. But yeah, just 10-minute warning. So we'll try to get everyone in. Then we'll give outros. Then we'll close it out.
So
go
like the
ahead.
point is that iconography is the actual like issue. It's not just like the voices that are being used. Like that's one thing, but it's everything that's attached.
Right. So my point then is that if that's the case, then at what point how do we differentiate between things which are totally fine, but just some people that are just borrowing from cultures, and some people are just upset, but it's really fine because someone's
Well,
always going to be upset. How do we
and I
differentiate
mean,
between that
well,
and
it's scale,
and the
right?
problematic? Okay.
Well, I mean, it's
well,
scale.
yeah, it is
like
scale.
if millions of people are like, I am very upset by this, and there's like petitions going out, then and I mean, like, you know, capitalism is doing its thing in a sense, and like the free
Well, what if
speech is doing its thing
petitions
in
are going
space.
out? Petitions go out for all sorts of insane, crazy shit all the time.
Okay,
You know,
well,
you don't
if
wanna
it's a
see some
popular,
Republicans-
no, if it's a very popular petition,
Okay.
like just the act of making a petition isn't the problem, right? It's
Sure.
how many people sign on to it and follow through. If millions of people are actually offended and something actually gets canceled, then that's probably an indicator that there's something fucking wrong with it. And if something doesn't get canceled and it makes it like the Black Witch, then clearly there wasn't a problem at all and everything's fine. Like you can
I-
literally let people make that
I
distinction,
think
right?
there's room for some kind of distinction like that. I just don't think we've done a very good job of like sort of trying to narrow down a reasonable way of
I mean,
parsing that out in
well,
this
well,
conversation.
How
May-
would you
may I try-
protect
wait,
these
wait.
institutions? Well, I just want to let me just get
Hmm?
meet here real quick. This is really important. How would you protect these artists' mediums from getting canceled in a way that doesn't impede capitalism or free speech?
I'm not
Oh my
making a
God.
prescription as to how to achieve that end.
He's
It might
asking.
not be possible.
But
or it
he's
might not be
asking.
responsible to even attempt.
Yeah.
Well,
How would I? You're asking me
people
to
from
try
this
to
discussion.
solve a problem that I don't necessarily think needs
Yeah.
to be solved or know how to. I don't know.
Bro,
what the
we
point
just
of
tried
it is.
I
to
don't think it
fucking
needs to
solve
be
a
solved.
problem.
Why are you
bro.
complaining about cancel culture?
No, can I wait, can I try and answer Professor Me before this goes off? Because
for
like
it.
it's a very salient question, and I think Katie answered this a while back. We asked the people who the representation's
Yep.
about. Like, if this is something like it's so obvious, it's sitting me in the face. If there is a culture being represented, and I'm not necessarily a part of that culture, or I can't understand it, and I am a part of that culture, it is best for me to ask people who do have this criticism, and then I can make my own judgment on whether or not I want to join the critique bandwagon or sit my ass down. I did this when it came to the orcs. I said this earlier. I don't necessarily see how orcs are conflated with black people. That's not a bandwagon I'm gonna hop on. When I talked about the interracial thing, it was just like, scientific racism. I don't like the ideas of scientific racism and how that affects gameplay. But like when we're talking about how we look at this and how we solve the problem, just talk to the people who are represented.
True.
Hey,
I see a direction.
finish me, and then
I was
Katie,
gonna
did
say,
you want in?
yeah. Directionally, I agree with you
I
guys.
want it in
I-
3 million hours ago.
Okay.
Well, I'm literally about to be. Excuse me, one sentence.
Katie,
I
then
direct-
Nick after me. So
I directionally agree with you guys. I just think that it just seemed like throughout the conversation, every time I tried to point out that there hasn't been a clear point at which that does become a problem been discussed, and I need that problem. What has been given to me as a counterexample was that some number of people care about these things, and that's not enough for me. That's all.
For those people.
Well, yeah, but some number of
Hey,
people are
hey, okay.
always going to care about everything.
Katie, please.
That's-
Katie.
This
And then
after
Nick.
panel gonna be
Katie,
lit.
Katie, it's your turn. I know you've been waiting.
Yeah. I don't know, Meat. I'm sorry. I think people threw out like millions. I think if people I can't give you a specific number, and I think the issue isn't the number. It's again, you and Wick specifically. You have an issue with like not being willing to be okay with you don't find the claims valid, which is why you're looking for a number. A lot of people supported Nazi Germany in Germany. So numbers is not always the way to go with it. Because earlier when I brought up like being upset at sweatshops and Nike, I think one person being upset about it, like we would say more people should be upset about it as well. So it's not always like if 1 million people support this thing, then it's good or bad. 1 million people can be led astray. 1 million people can also have like the wisdom of the masses. Okay? It depends. What I was trying to say a long time ago was when we were discussing this stupid panda bullshit from World of Warcraft, we said Asian accents. And when I said earlier that when people don't understand the validity of some arguments or why stuff are offensive is because they're ignorant, it's because, not because I'm saying that they're not smart enough to understand. I'm saying that if you don't have an immediate issue with saying Asian accents and just grouping all accents from all countries of Asia to be one accent that can be exemplified, that's already representative of how little you understand about like this issue, right? You will have a problem understanding what's problematic about an issue when you know zero things about it. So when I'm in like American circles and people call like the Old Testament the Torah, nobody else except me knows that that's really ignorant and stupid and doesn't make any sense because that's not the Old Testament. But nobody else in those circles know that. So in a way, everyone around are being ignorant. And when I call them out and I'm like, you know, you're using it wrong, it's not what it is. And people are like, well, what does it matter? So ignorance can absolutely be offensive and it can absolutely be a problem. And the way you raise awareness is you ask Asian people, are you upset by this? Why? I want to understand. Which
Wait,
I
but
said a lot.
which Asian people? You can't lump them all into the same category, right?
That's fair. That's
Okay.
fair.
So you
But I
see
think
how you
multiple
just did
Asian
what-
Oh my
people
God.
were
You know what
upset
I mean?
about
Like
it.
you just
You
gave
must.
this whole
You just
speech
revealed that
about
you
how
know
people
nothing
who
about these cultures,
put
according to your own
Asians
quote I have
all
right here on
together
this piece
in
of
one
paper.
group are ignorant, and then you put all the Asians together in one group.
Yeah, what does
and
that
how that
reveal
might
about
be
their
an issue.
ignorance?
I think that if that's your response to my argument,
It's
I really
not,
It's your
but
response.
it's not my only response
You're
to
both
it because I
talking.
don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you that it's okay for people to have valid criticism, and these are very valid criticisms. What's not okay for and this is my opinion. It's my opinion. What's not okay and what I would find not moral, but this is my morals, mind you, is when you seek to enforce what you think is not okay onto others by destroying art. That is all. Okay, continue, please, and then we'll go to Nick.
Yeah, I think your initial response was pretty weird. And I wanted to say that. Again, I think people using their power. I don't know what you mean by enforce. I get that you're very worried about people being hurt. I don't see, if you support capitalism, I don't see why you suddenly have a problem with the market of ideas and like demands of the market and people not wanting a product. You don't seem to have this problem with other types when people don't get their art published. You just, again, it seems very clear that you just don't find the claims to why this art is problematic to be valid enough, so you have an issue with it, and
But I just said
that's
they're valid.
fine.
I just
What?
said they're valid. I said the complaints, especially when it comes to World of Warcraft, are valid. They're valid. Yeah, I don't play World of Warcraft.
Okay, so if the claims, and let's use World of Warcraft because that's an easy example.
Sure,
If
I
the
just don't-
claims are valid,
Mhm.
then what's the issue with people trying to sanction Blizzard?
Because they have the choice to not engage with the content. Does that make sense? World of Warcraft is not an inalienable right that they have. They must have access to, and it must be the way they want it to. No,
So
it just
why
isn't.
can't
It's
we-
not an
They're
inalienable right. It's not a right that they have
They're
access
allowed
Does
to
that make
use
sense?
their market power to try
Sure,
to
and-
enforce change
and I
on the
would ap-
market.
But I would oppose that, and that's my right as well, right?
okay,
Sure.
so
Okay.
That's
So we're all in
But
agreement.
Nick, it's Nick's turn. It's Nick's turn. He's been waiting semi-patiently. And
So-
then we will give closing statements. Is that
So
good? And then we'll I'll close this out and we'll rate it to someone. Okay. Nick, then closing statements, please.
So I think Pyro made the best point on the whole panel. The idea of if people are being hurt, harmed, or offended by certain subject matter, certain people groups especially, we should be talking to them. We should be asking them how often, and in what way are these things bothering them. I think we should make the decision on whether or not Sure.
That wasn't my point.
What was the point?
That was Katie's point.
All right,
Like,
then
wait,
Katie
wait,
had the best
wait, no,
one
no.
on the panel. We all
When I
agree.
said that, like that was Katie's point. I just wanted to give credit
Okay.
where credit's due.
Katie had the best point. Katie had the best point. Okay, yeah. So Katie had the best point, and Pyro echoed the best point. I
And
feel
then
like I
you
remember
heard it
Katie-
because Pyro's a man.
Okay, that one I don't like that much. But I'll go on
Are you
anyway.
offended?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with being offended.
Nothing wrong.
Really?
How many men are
Can-
offended by me right now? Let's try to use market power to cancel me if it's necessary.
So Nick, finish your point, and then we'll
We're
give
not gonna
outros, please.
Oh yeah, sure. So I think that Katie made the best point, which was that we should talk to people or the people groups that are offended, or being hurt or harmed, and kind of deal with them and figure out, okay, how many of these people feel this way? How common of an experience is this? Should we curtail our art because we care about people's feelings, essentially? Because I think feelings are important. I think the problem is right now we have too many vicariously offended white people with too few problems of their own getting involved in these discussions and patriotizing and tokenizing these groups as a banner by which they can be righteously indignant at the world. And I think it's cringe. And so I think we should give people of different cultures kind of like a soapbox to voice their grievance, and then we can kind of decide from there, like, how common of an experience of this is this, and if it's a really common experience, then we should look at the media and see, okay, this is harmful. These people that we're trying to represent don't appreciate this representation. That's what I think is important and would be a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're gonna give all these lovely, and I know it got heated. I know it got a little more spicy than I expected, to be very honest with you, but I think it was an important discussion. I do see the value in having these different opinions put forth and things like that. So I'm going to give everyone an outro closing statement, and tell the world where we can find you if they like your takes or they hate your takes. Either way, we're going to start with Mad Lad, and we're going to go around the room. So Mad Lad, please.
You have to pardon me. I have to prepare for my child's bedtime. I'm not normally here on Fridays, so just don't mind what I'm doing here. You can find me at Mad Ladden. That is MADLAD_N. I will talk about. On Sunday, there's I help run the weekly stand-up as well. That is weekly stand-up, no spaces or anything. Weekly stand-up, we cover game development and workers' rights. So tune into our show on Sunday for that. That's 4 p.m. EST. I should can you do a shout out for that as well, Wick? I appreciate it. And then on Monday, Lilac Doll is going to be teaching me something exciting. On Wednesday, we're going to have Polyamory Part 2. And then I've got like a whole busy March schedule. So if you're interested in all the crazy stuff I'm going to be doing in March, you can follow me on Twitch. I just wanted to get back to our point for just real quick. I just wanted to say that minorities depend on vicariously offended white people to be righteously indignant.
You stole my point!
No! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
This is appropriation, Mad Lad.
No, this
How
is
dare
worse.
you? How
I
dare
know.
you?
Now I have
This
to
is
give
like-
you credit for my point!
Wow.
This is actually like worse than what happened with the whole like only hearing it with Pyro, because like literally I just took it, like I accepted it from your mind and did the
I
whole
am
like
a
sexist
marginalized
thing.
group on this panel,
so
and you
sorry.
just
All right,
keep
here.
taking from me.
Do you just
Finish
want
your
it?
closing
Here,
statement, and we'll move on.
you can have it. I was just gonna say that we depend on the vicariously offended white folks to be righteously indignant, because without allies, without people who are willing to take space in spaces where minorities aren't around, there is no talking. Like when I was in some of my World of Warcraft guilds, for example, I'd be surrounded by dudes who'd be talking like some freaky shit about women, and I would literally have to be the only person to say, this isn't okay, guys, this is kind of fucked up. And they would call me gay or soy or whatever the fuck else, but I was using my power, my privilege, to voice a concern that someone who didn't have that privilege could not engage in, I guess, or engage with. And that's like my point, is that like, it's not to say that all these individuals should be demonized. I think we can like look at it on a case-by-case basis, and if there's a large enough population to cancel something, it's probably indicator of like how problematic a certain thing was. If something gets canceled, there's a reason. Thank you so much. I have to take care of bedtime.
Yeah,
So
thank you for being here.
I'll see you guys later.
Have-
Take care.
Have fun. I
Oh,
love
man.
the outfit. Yamato, where can we find you? Who are you, and what do you think of this?
I'm
whole thing?
Black X Yamato. You can find me at Black X Yamato on Twitch. I do a lot of gaming. I play a lot of video games. I'm stepping into the political circle a little bit, just a tad bit. I think these discussions are very important, because these are discussions are about race and things that make people feel uncomfortable. I like to apply stuff like this or discussions like this with stuff that I know, like anime and games, to see if I can bridge a gap with people. But I'm gonna switch it over to Katie.
Wait, is it just switching to Nina? No, you're the mod.
Yeah, Katie,
Okay.
please, yes.
I'm Katie. My name is Dat with a D. Katie with 2 E's and then Doe, DOE. So yeah, I think that I understand that it's annoying when a bunch of people who have seemingly no reason to be offended over something seem to build up a big ruckus and make a lot of noise and hurt other people's like living. And I definitely agree that sometimes people's like outrage is not very valid and I don't support it, right? But I think that history has proven that the majority group, so in westernized countries like in the States and Europe that are predominantly white, or the majority that are white, minorities and marginalized groups weren't heard. And the only reason they are kind of being heard now is because a bunch of white people suddenly care about that shit. So I don't think they're vicariously offended. I think, unfortunately, if white people don't give a fuck about Black people issues in the States, then the States is never going to change. And that's just how it is. I'm not saying that it's fun or that it's good. I wish marginalized groups could just like speak up on stuff that offend them and someone would give a fuck. They have been doing that for decades. It hasn't happened. Now they have allies that are white, that are triggered, that are SJW or whatever the fuck, and things are changing. So I'm glad that people are willing to fight causes that, unfortunately, as a society, we were incapable of trying to resolve until now, until white people started giving a fuck. Nick, I'm sorry if I offended you. I thought it will be a funny joke. It did not. That's my second strike, and I'm just gonna stop like making jokes with dudes. It's just not working for me. So
I
I'm sorry.
just wanted to check. I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure if it was serious or if it was a joke.
It was. I was being playful. My playful isn't working. Cancel me. Like, seriously. It's like there needs to be consequences.
You're fine, Katie. We love to have you on. We love your opinions here, even if sometimes I severely disagree. I think your jokes are funny. So
Thank you, Wick.
I
But
found
what
all
do
of
I
them
know,
funny.
right?
And it's
I'm
just
just
I found them all funny until the last one. I even maybe find funny. It's just I wasn't sure. I was like, is this serious? Is this not serious? Like I'm just trying to figure it out.
So yeah, thanks. You can follow Black Yamato and Katie. I shouted out links. Nick, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think we made a lot of progress here today. We have come once again to the realization that people of color need the white savior to step in and fix all of the problems. I thought we had gotten past that. I've been listening to people of color personally, and I'm a quarter Jamaican, so I don't know if that counts. That's still a big question that is kind of up for debate. And in my experience, what a lot of people of color have been saying is essentially, we wish that white people would signal boost us, try to aid our platforms, give us the ability to speak rather than speaking for us, which seems to be a really common thing that happens. Wick was mentioning a phenomenon that happens within the small time fiction writing spheres, which is really, really problematic, where a lot of white SJWs actually shout down disproportionately women of color who are trying to become what's the word? The people that write books.
Authors.
Authors, thank you. Authors who are trying to become authors because their stuff is not as PC as the white saviors. So yeah, I wish we just had more people of color being signal boosted by white allies.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, so I loved having you on. Love to have you more often. I appreciate your takes. I appreciate your point of view. I think you represented your point well. I don't I don't have anything negative to say. So we're gonna go to Professor Meat next. Thanks.
Hey, yeah. So I actually think that a lot of my views are basically everyone's representing basically 99.9% of I feel like the conclusions to be had here. So rather than repeat stuff to state my views, I think I'm just going to fill out the tiny little gap quickly that I don't feel like it's quite been addressed, so we can close up the loops. And that is lizard men shouldn't be ashamed of their lisp. There's nothing wrong with Chinese culture. And also, lastly, pandas are no longer endangered, and hopefully soon they will no longer be a racial minority.
Well, if you like Professor Meat's takes or you hate Professor Meat's takes, and
We
it's a
love our hate
toss-up.
watchers over in the meat
It's a
factory.
toss-up. You can go find him at Professor Meat. I'm kidding, Professor Meat. I always enjoy your energy.
Thank
You
you, my
bring a lot
friend.
of energy to the discussion.
You
and I
have a pretty
appreciate that.
face too.
And
Thank you so
yes,
much.
you're eye candy, which we appreciate.
Even my
but
face? Normally it's
this
just
whole
about the bun.
panel,
Wow.
this whole panel has been eye candy. This whole panel is
Look
just
at all these beautiful
pure,
people.
just
Nick, take your
feast
shirt
for
off.
the
Nick, do it.
senses.
Do it right now.
Yeah.
Do it right now.
No,
Do it. Do it. Do
you're
it. Do it. Do it. Do it. In front of all these people.
Oh,
Come on.
Oh,
Nick
okay.
like did
Okay.
the hair flip, and I waited for you to release the bun and for you guys to like do the shampoo thing together, and it just didn't happen.
Oh man, no,
Very
sorry.
frustrating.
That's you'll have to subscribe to our OnlyFans to get that.
Okay. Okay. Well, on that note, Pyro.
Yeah, I enjoyed this panel a lot. I think this is one of the few panels, other than like maybe Prime's All Black Everything panel, where everyone had like a good point somewhere in this debate. Everyone had something to say and something to incorporate. Yes, I know, Katie, I know you don't like the meat point, but like even the meat train, he provided to this conversation a level of nuance and shit that I think we would have missed otherwise, because we were about to shoot way overhead. I think you did this too. I think this happened a lot almost on every individual's part, where like the conversation was pulled in a direction, because this topic is just so vast and I really enjoyed it. Thank you everyone for being here. Like I enjoyed it. You want to find me? I'm at the Pyro Tyrant. Like I enjoy talking about shit like fantasy writing and shit like that. That's one of my many hobbies. So like, yeah, I'm always down to talk. You can subscribe to me on Twitch TV, or you can just add me on Discord since I don't really stream, and shoot me a message and I might respond to you. So like, yeah, it's cool.
Pyro Tyrant. Always a pleasure. I love interacting with you. We fight a lot, but we also, we chill too. I think me and Pyro's relationship is a good example of people who can be friends and still have disagreements, and I miss that. I don't think that we have enough of that in
Don't
society.
use me
But
as your
Pyro's
token.
wow. Okay, so we're gonna have
It
this
was
thing
right
that
there.
happens on after a lot of panels. Is he's gonna take me to the side to a room. He's gonna yell at me for a couple hours, and I'm just gonna sit there and I'm like, yes, Pyro. I'm sorry, Pyro. Forgive
Pyro,
me, Pyro.
you need to let him go, because I was gonna take him to a room and yell at him for a few
okay.
hours.
I guess
so
you guys can tag team. It'll be a sport. Okay.
we'll
But
double
thank
team you.
you.
It's fine.
Yeah, fine.
I'm gonna
Find,
ignore the
Pyro
obvious
Tyrant.
joke.
Yes. Find Pyro Tyrant at the link I
ignore it.
provided, or on Discord. In my Discord, it's all good. Yamato, please. Or no, we already did Yamato. He's
Yeah.
just
It's
Yeah,
just
we're
you,
done.
Wick. It's
Yeah,
just
oh
you.
yeah. So
It's your
yes, I love
clothing.
the panel. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. I know we got a little heated. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. I'd love to have more topics like this where everyone can kind of get in on it and go head to head. It got a little too personal at times for me, but we toned it down after that, which I appreciate and I enjoyed. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. To my audience, we love you. The gift subs today, the participation was on point. It was great. We love to see it. Monday is my next show. Though you can find me on Stardust Chaos Cast on Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. I usually wear a costume of some sort. Some of you have seen me in my infamous puppy costume. Some of you have not. So yeah, that might be fun. I don't know what kind of costume I'm going to go in, but we'll find out. And Monday we have Crowdsource Politics coming on. I'm going to actually raid into him today. He's struggling on the viewers, so we got to help him out. So
Damn.
yeah, and we're going to talk about Ukraine on Monday, and then we have my open call-in show and an interview with a man that goes by the name of the Gentleman's Club, and so I'm going to interview him and see what his deal is. That should be interesting. And yeah, so thank you once again. Love you all. Let's see if I can get this raid right. Source Politics. Okay. Oh,
Oh
no,
no, this is
I'll
gonna
shout
take
him
a
out,
half an
but
hour.
yeah.